All right, welcome everybody to another Discourse Den show. Today I got someone named Ken Good. Ken, rather than me slaughtering your introduction, why don't you just tell everybody what you're all about?
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me. I am an attorney specializing in bail law. I've written articles across the country on what is good bail reform, and I've written numerous articles on the bad bail reform pushed by certain urban areas across our country. Um, but most importantly, I am a father of two daughters, and I think being a dad to two girls is a unique experience when you have multiple, children that are both sexes. I think that that's a very different situation. All you have to do is look at a girl sometimes, and they'll melt, or they'll melt your heart. And then my youngest had a bone marrow transplant when she was 5, and so we have. I always like to say we're completely different people today than we were before her bone marrow transplant. And she's 20 years old today, and she's a junior in college. Um, I'm a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. I'm on their legislative committee. And like I said, I'm an attorney in the state of Texas, and I specialize in bail law.
Okay. So the article that I was sent, I was told was going to be like the main thing that you would be referencing. You didn't write that one, right? That's just something you cite and reference.
Sure, yes.
Okay. So yeah, with that being said, do you want to just kind of lay out your sort of main claim here based upon this data and what you're suggesting?
Well, let me back up and start it a little bit differently in light of the Trump presidency. So we've been hearing for years simultaneous arguments on criminal justice reform and on immigration reform. On the immigration front, we've heard we cannot safeguard our borders. We cannot shut down our borders under existing law. We have to have a new law passed. And I was one of the people that believed that new law that was proposed that did not pass was really a subterfuge to really do the opposite of what they were proposing. And I did not believe we needed that new law. But it doesn't matter what I think. We get a new president who concentrates on closing the border, and within 6 weeks, our border is completely different than it was for the whole 4 years before that. And so the lesson from that is we know how to contain or close the border. And I would apply that same theory to criminal justice. We know how to fight crime. But for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we've been prohibited in some of our urban areas from fighting crime. We're doing things in the opposite direction that's making crime worse. And I think we've learned that pretty heavily. We've had these pseudoscience groups that have put out all these studies that said, do these soft on crime policies and they will not increase crime. And they said, you don't have to believe us. Just look at the FBI statistics. The FBI statistics show that crime has been going down. In October of last year, right before the election, I wrote an article about here's all the different reasons why we should not be relying upon the FBI crime statistics. It was published in the Attorney at Law magazine. And then 10 days after my article was published, suddenly the FBI crime statistics had been updated, and there's a whole reason why they have been, but suddenly they showed crime was rising instead of going down. And I still think it was incomplete. So they're still incomplete to this day, and there's a reason for that. But the problem is then all these groups that have been writing articles for years saying crime is not going up, you don't have to believe our statistics, just look at the FBI statistics, suddenly a month before the election or less than a month before the election could not make that argument anymore. Now, it wasn't a result of me writing an article. I was just, looking at the issue, and so my timing was just fortunate. But if you're following the election, that is the day that all these groups started yelling, Trump is a fascist, Trump is Hitler, because they could no longer talk about crime because their complete argument was destroyed. And then a week later, one of these pseudoscience groups issued a brand new report that suddenly said, well, all of these policies crime has not increased because of these policies. It's because of other reasons. Again, just doubling down to try to defend these pseudoscience groups. And I think the reason for that is we've got one party that's outsourced all of its policy on these issues. They've outsourced immigration policy and they've outsourced law enforcement policy to these advocacy groups. And that's real dangerous in our government, in our form of government, because an advocacy group, you should be listening to them and then formulating the policies that you think will work. When you outsource it to them, they will never concede they're not working. They will always say, it just needs more time. It just needs more time. And so the damage that's been done to our country, I believe, is because we've outsourced policy to these advocacy groups, and we're now reaping the damage from that for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So just a couple things here. I should have asked you this before we started, but are you just here for a solid hour? Was there any extra time you had?
I'm here as long as you want me.
Okay. Just it'll kind of change like the amount of things I want to bring up and stuff. It depends, because an hour just flies by when
I'm
you're
here. 10 minutes, only 10 minutes.
Okay, so I just want to quickly address the immigration thing, because you said something that, you know, I, as someone who very much pays attention to all this politics and everything else, though I'm not an attorney, like I've studied philosophy. I just am okay at research. Like I'm not like some professional like you are, but this is not something I had ever heard, even in Democratic circles or anything, that it was impossible to reform the border. In fact, most people I heard who just oppose like Republicans' approaches to it and whatnot agreed that the border needed to be dealt with in a way, just that they disagreed with the wall, right? They said that maybe resources would be better allocated to more judges, to maybe drones, to more personnel, rather than spent on a big wall. So I hadn't heard anywhere until now that like people were saying this is impossible through law to do.
This, with respect, I think that there's Biden himself made that argument. You know, they were pushing this bill through the legislature as he was getting ready to run for re-election, and so he specifically argued we need this bill to be able to secure the border. And also, when Biden was elected, he reversed almost all of Trump's policies on the border, and he opened it up. I mean, he didn't say, oh, we need to do this. I mean, he opened the border up completely. I mean, I don't think Biden did anything to try to close the border. In fact, his cabinet members were arguing the exact opposite. Our border is secure. So I don't agree with your statement that they were saying, oh, we need to address these things. They were ignoring the problem.
Well, that's
and saying,
different though, Ken, than you saying they were saying it's impossible through law, right? Because you were originally saying that everyone was
through
claiming...
current law. I do think that Biden and his supporters were saying, in preparation for the election, that was one of the ways that they were getting ready to run, is saying we cannot secure the border without passing a new statute. And they proposed a statute, and it didn't pass. And so during the whole campaign until Biden dropped out, and even afterwards with Harris, they were saying we could have secured the border if we had passed that bill, but we didn't. So it's the Republicans' fault that we haven't secured the border.
Well, and
the whole
Trump
fallacy
himself,
is we never needed the bill in the first place.
You know, Trump himself sent out a message about that bill, right? And told his Republican followers not to vote for it. So it was sort of directly related to Trump and the Republicans why their border bill didn't pass. And they were trying to legislate it.
I didn't say that it wasn't defeated by the Republicans or that Trump didn't take a position on it. My position is we didn't need it to secure the border. And I also argue that if it had passed, it would have weakened the government's ability to secure the border, because it greatly increased the number of people that could come into the country under other avenues. I mean, the stuff that we've
like legally, right? I think their focus is more on allowing people to legally come here rather than have to wait in line and just feel desperate enough to cross illegally, right?
So who was it that just said this a couple of days ago that I was listening to? Oh my gosh, I'm getting old. No, it was Holman, the head of ICE. He was saying, do you know why Biden was putting people in hotels instead of ICE facilities? because if they were being put in, and the difference is $100 and something a day versus $500 a day. The reason why was because if they were held in an ICE facility, they had a hearing within 30 days and would have a deportation order. But by going to a hotel, they would be held. I mean, the hearing could be put off to 3, 4, 5, or longer years because there's no deadline if they're not in an ICE facility. So I don't think that we can argue with a straight face that Biden and his administration was in any way attempting to secure the border when they were using an app to fly people in to hide numbers of people coming in. I just don't think it's a genuine argument to say that they were concerned about the border. I think they were doing that in opposite of that. And I think it's because in part they had outsourced that policy to these advocacy groups.
Well, from my perspective, this is the difference, right? I think they were trying to secure the border just in a different way than the Republicans want to. They would prefer to allow more people the legal avenue to come in here, whereas Republicans just want to deport everybody, right? Like that's securing the border for the Republicans versus like, how can we get more judges, like more personnel to actually process these people and give them a legal path to citizenship.
Well,
that's fine that people disagree with that. Like that's fine if the Democrats and Republicans disagree with allowing more people in, but like just sit here and say that they just weren't concerned about the border at all is not true. That's why they tried to pass a bill.
No, I disagree with that completely. The only reason why they tried to pass a bill, because they didn't do anything the first 3 years of their term. They only tried to pass a bill because they decided to run for re-election and they realized it was going to be a political issue. So if they had wanted to address it with a bill, they would have proposed it in their first year or their second year or their third year, not right before he decided to run for re-election. So I completely disagree with that. Now, usually I would agree with you. There's two different ways to hit, an issue. I mean, I used to think when I was a lot younger, if on a stimulus package, we can do tax cuts. That's the Republican way. So there's more money in business pockets so that they can hire more employees. And then the same thing with the Democrat way of stimulus is to put money in people's pockets. But I kind of over time, I think both of those kind of get to the same result, but I kind of, have, changed over time to say, I just kind of go back to the principle that when we provide somebody with a fish they eat for a day, but we provide them with a job, then they, eat all the time or they can provide for themselves. And so I would prefer business to hire people because that's more sustainable than the government providing, resources for a day, for a month, and so on. So I really think, but I concede that on the stimulus, there's two different ways that kind of get to the same result. I don't agree at all that the Democrats or Biden's administration was trying a different way to get to the same result. Look at the mayor of New York. When he tried to agree that there was a problem with the border, he got attacked by Democrats. So part of the advocacy groups that are arguing on the border issues, if you deviate from their dogma, you get attacked. Hostages in Israel, and he's
I'm sorry. We cannot sit here and go back and forth on like January 6th, the summer of love. Oh, the protesters getting locked down by ICE. Like, yeah, there's moral dilemmas on both sides. People are getting attacked because tensions are rising, right? They have been rising since COVID and since Trump came in and started spewing all this divisive rhetoric. So we can't just sit here and like point to all these little examples of people.
Well, we should be able to agree, right? There's divisive rhetoric on both sides. When we say that there's only divisive rhetoric from Trump, then we're showing.
I'm not trying to say there's only divisive rhetoric from Trump. I agree. It does come from both sides. Absolutely. What I'm saying is that's when tensions really started to rise during Trump and COVID.
The whole Biden thing is a great example of criminal justice reform as well. I mean, we've got the facts. I think the facts are pretty clear that we have someone who was president that was in a mental decline. The period of time, you can argue about it. But the problem is if you said anything that questioned it, you were attacked. Same thing with criminal justice reform.
No,
if
that's
you
not
said
true
anything,
at all. I'm sorry. That's
to
just not true.
oppose criminal justice reform in our says you got attacked.
I'm sorry, that's just not true. I've watched Democrats, I've watched left-wing, like socialist, super far left-wing pundits criticizing Biden and his mental health decline. They did not get attacked.
After
They're
his
still
debate.
standing.
After
right?
his debate.
No, before. There were so many leftists calling for Biden to step down because they thought he would lose. And so to say that you get attacked just for calling this out is inaccurate.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of evidence. Okay. So what you're saying is there was evidence of his mental decline and there were people calling it out long before the debate, maybe even his whole first term. So what you're disagreeing with me is that there was a massive cover up of the whole Democrat Party. So then you've got to agree there was at least a cover up of some part of the Democrat Party.
Okay. I'm sorry. We have to we have to go.
Sorry, my attorney roots are showing. I apologize.
No, what it is, and I'm this way too. This isn't just on you. Like, if we could try to like really stick to each topic, because I know, especially when it comes to like Trump versus Biden or whatever else, it's so easy to be like, well, what about this, and this the Democrats did, or for me to do the same thing and be like, well, what about Trump, blah, 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 blah. So like this all started with immigration, and look where we're at now. We're just so off track from what we were trying to talk about.
Well, I keep pulling it back to say the same thing is applying to our criminal justice reform. I think, when you have all these groups and we outsource criminal justice reform to these advocacy groups and they issue all these reports saying crime will not increase by releasing more criminals or by enacting soft on crime policies. Look at Proposition 47 in California. It changed certain felonies to misdemeanors, and they were arguing this will allow these people to get jobs, but they'll still have to respond for these crimes. And then we have DAs in our urban areas that decided we're no longer going to prosecute theft under $950. And look what the impact of that was. I mean, that was bipartisan. That was supported by a bipartisan group. So I've been critical of the right groups that supported that as well, because it's done nothing but increase crime, and it's done a lot more than that. It's made communities not safe, and it's killed commercial property values. And that's the reason why they rolled it back in November.
So we should sorry, I'm still just stuck on the border thing, but we should get into that's where we started, right? Like, we should get into the crime stuff. I want to make it very clear, right, that like I agree with a lot of you guys' criticisms of the Democratic Party. I am not someone who is just gung-ho on Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, and this is like the huge difference that I'm seeing manifest before my eyes in our current politics, is that many, many people who voted for the Democrats are actually very critical of them when they get in office. Just look at Barack Obama and how many deportations did he do? What did he do with Guantanamo Bay?
Well, wait a minute.
Right?
He did a lot of deportations until his last year in office.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, though, like, as someone who did vote for Joe Biden, I understand that they're actually not even in line with my personal values. They just seem to be a little bit more than the Republicans generally are. But I mean, you and I would agree we should not have illegal aliens who have substantial criminal histories in our country. Right.
I mean, the problem is we have not, for the last 4 years, we have not, I don't believe, done anything to try to get them out. In fact, we have an administration that has encouraged or allowed cities and states to be, protect them. I mean, look at, this example of a judge taking out someone, an illegal alien out the back door because ICE was waiting for them in the hallway.
They got arrested.
I'm not saying that they didn't get arrested. I'm just saying, why do we have our levers of government taking steps and having no consequences from Biden's administration for doing the same things or worse? And so, I mean, you can't say that these people were worried about the border, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fine. We can say they're not worried about it, but like, here's where I'm seeing your hypocrisy from my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're calling out these governmental officials with the levers of power for going against the law, right? You're super concerned about crime in our country, yet somehow you guys seem to turn a blind eye over and over to Trump and his administration's criminal lawfare that they are currently engaging in. And like, I know this isn't just like a media trope. He literally has been convicted on 34 accounts of business fraud. If we care about crime, why are we supporting such a guy?
Okay, first of all, you're not convicted until there's a final judgment, and his judgment isn't final. So, I mean, my appellate attorney's coming out saying it's not a final judgment. But let's say, okay, you're right, he's got a conviction. But if you're accusing him of lawfare, do you not think anything that was done to him was lawfare either? I mean, do you separate it that much?
I'm fine saying I'm fine agreeing with you that it was.
Okay, then let's assume that.
Not judging him as much as you would judge whatever happened before him.
Let's assume it was. Let's just assume for the moment that it was lawfare on Trump. Do you not agree that what's good for the goose is good for the gander? I mean, it does create a slippery slope. But if we're going after the same people that committed the lawfare against him, if we start with the assumption that it was lawfare, then why can they do it and Trump not? And I'm not saying he is, but I will be happy to get into that discussion.
I don't think either of them should do it, right?
Well, I don't think so either, but look what they put Trump through. I don't think there's any other Republican in the entire world that would have been able to withstand the lawfare, if we assume there was lawfare.
Well, this is
Trump withstood.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
And still get reelected.
If you're gonna stand on this ground with me and just concede off the bat that Trump's convictions stand, right? You're gonna just say, let's just assume that for the conversation.
Oh no, we're doing the opposite. We're assuming it's lawfare. I mean, I said I agree that there is a jury finding of violations of the criminal law. But we then said, do you agree that any part of that was lawfare? If you think it was, which I believe it was all lawfare.
To me, it's like calling Hunter Biden's charges of illegal drugs and a weapon lawfare. When it's like,
I don't agree with that
dude got convicted, right? Like, it's not just lawfare. There's evidence here, and juries convicted them based upon the evidence. Why are we not trusting our rule of law if we are the party of tough on crime?
But Biden didn't ever go to trial. I mean, Biden didn't go to trial. He didn't have a jury finding. He pled guilty, and that was. I mean, and remember, if you're going to argue that it's not lawfare, remember the Department of Justice gave him a sweetheart deal on a plea deal where none of these charges would have been pursued. And the judge overseeing that plea deal rejected it and would not approve it. And that's the reason why all that happened. And so only because one judge stepped in and said, this is not fair, did any of those charges and his guilty plea take place. If you want to really talk about lawfare, look at his whole laptop situation. And you have 51 or a whole group of people who are experts in the intelligence world lying to the American public before the 2020 election, saying that it was disinformation from Russia, when now years later we know it was absolutely not disinformation. It was all true. But those people all came out and said that to get Biden elected.
The laptop thing, as far as I understand it, is not actually proven to be a true thing. So
no, they conceded in one of his criminal cases it was valid, and he dropped his lawsuit against that the laptop was his and that the hard drive that was produced was his information, that it was not disinformation, I believe. I mean, he had a lawsuit against the guy that he gave it to, and he dropped it after the election.
I'm saying as far as what the laptop had on it and what it proved as far as collusion or international government collusion and whatnot, like all of that is still undetermined as far as I understand it.
No, I respectfully, I think there's been evidence of meetings when Biden said I never met, didn't have anything to do with that. There's now been abundant evidence of Biden participating in those meetings. I mean, I just don't think, I mean, you can't, I mean, look at this is the problem where we are. What's the moral compass that we have from our elected officials? I mean, it almost makes it look like we're saying all parties are bad. And I disagree with that. I think there's a moral compass here. You've got one guy who's saying this is lawfare and I'm fighting back and I'm defending myself and I'm spending billions of dollars to do it. and then the other people are lying to the public about a laptop to try to get the big guy reelected. And I think all those things show exactly what they've done on criminal justice reform as well.
If it's all lawfare, then what about I understand a powerful person like Donald Trump with a lot of money can sit and appeal until the crows come home, right? But like, we do have convictions, and we have civil cases with E. Jean Carroll, right? So we do have convictions, and to just assume with Donald Trump only that all of these convictions are just false lawfare.
How many of those cases were dropped? I mean, you've only got one civil case that's on appeal and one criminal case which is on appeal. None of them have a final judgment. So for you to say, I mean, you've got this. I mean, you've got to have a final judgment first.
Right.
You're jumping the gun, and that's exactly what happens in politics.
Well, we have convictions, though, right? Of course, people can appeal.
Well, it's not final. I mean, he's not he is not a convicted, felon until
and
the case is over.
To be fair, I've never said that, right? I've just focused on him having convictions from a jury, from a court system, and I just find it, I don't know why we are so skeptical of our jury system, our courts, when it goes against Trump, but we're always trusting it when it goes pro-Trump.
Okay,
right?
But that's a very good point. Why are we losing faith in the criminal justice system? And
we're not losing faith. We're only losing faith when it's against Trump.
No,
that's what I'm saying about you guys.
You cannot say that.
You
cannot say that. When you've got the head of the Democrat Party in the Senate standing before the Supreme Court of Texas and say, if you rule on this issue of abortion this way, then you will be attacked, and someone listens to him and then tries to kill Kavanaugh, and he gets arrested for it. And I mean, it's a direct result of the leader of the Senate for the Democrats and his call. So why are we having all these people who do not have faith in the legal system? There you have it.
I'm saying Trump supporters don't have faith in the legal system unless it comes from Trump's mouth and his administration. Then you guys never question anything. I told you at the beginning of this, one thing I'm very critical about you guys' movement is that me, as someone who voted for a Democrat, is constantly criticizing the Democrats because they're not doing what the people want, right? They're not following their not pundits, but their supporters, basically their voters. And so when it comes to someone like Donald Trump, it's opposite.
Let's back up.
Trump says anything.
What do Democrat voters want right now? Do they want a path of citizenship? I don't think they do. Do they want illegal immigrants who are criminals in the country? I don't believe they do.
What I hear from Democrats on immigration specifically, for the most part, is we want more resources for a legal path to citizenship, right?
I disagree with that. I don't think, there's not even a law currently that provides a path to citizenship. So to get there, you're ignoring the law, which is being done, has been done.
What do you mean there's not a law to a legal path to citizenship?
Not for illegal aliens, there's not.
Oh, yeah. I'm saying just the legal process, the process itself for like anyone wanting to come right now.
Look, my daughter is, fixing to be engaged to a guy who immigrated to this country when he was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. He and his family have been here ever since. They've gone through the legal process and they've become naturalized citizens. I don't have any problem with someone becoming a naturalized citizen, but don't bring in 20 million people illegally and expect me to agree to give them a path to citizenship and leapfrog them over everybody else who came legally. I don't think that's proper. I don't think that the public supports that either.
No, that's fine. I think you maybe misunderstood me when I was saying Democrats support just a better, like putting resources towards an easier process to come legally, not necessarily for the people here already illegally.
Well, I don't agree with that because Trump has already agreed to a process to encourage or bring in the brightest people across the world to the United States, and you would have thought he was a demon for proposing that, and to give them a pathway to citizenship. So we want to approach the brightest and the smartest.
What you're talking about?
Trump has supported bringing in more people that have high technological training, or they're business owners who can come in and help the country, or our country, with more products, more work,
So
more
are they going to
jobs.
get to cut the line over like someone seeking
Well, wait a
asylum?
minute. You just said the Democrats support that. So why wouldn't they
No, I
support that? Because it came from Trump.
well, no, you were just saying that we don't want to have people cutting the line, right? So if we have people seeking asylum all collected up in this big line to get in, and then we just allow these guys to cut in line to get in front because they bring something special to the table, right? Rather than they're just people literally seeking help, fleeing their country.
Or
That,
they've been taught, they've been brought in by cartels and told to claim asylum so that they can get released into the country and then go and do human trafficking,
well,
theft, or
sure.
bring their
And neither
whole
of us
drug
know the
operations to the
numbers. That
United
I don't
States.
think either of us actually know the numbers of true asylum seekers versus pretend asylum seekers, right? But the point is, there are genuine asylum
There's
seekers.
already articles out about the percentage of these asylum seekers applications that are being sustained. It is a
What's the
minuscule
methodology?
amount.
No,
Huh?
what's the methodology? How do you figure that out? How do you figure out if someone's genuinely
Okay, so
seeking
we're going to
asylum?
second guess the judges who are reviewing these and who
Weren't
are
you just spending a
designated by
whole
law.
20 minutes second guessing our judges because they're committing lawfare?
Oh
Why
my
can't
gosh,
I
we're just
second?
talking in circles now. We're just talking in
No,
circles.
this is what I'm
Uh,
talking about. Anytime I question our legal system, it's like, oh, what? We're going to question our judges now and we don't trust them. But as soon as they're
mhm.
targeting Trump, it's always lawfare. It's the Democrats being evil and corrupt.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
there's no winning for the other side there. If you constantly are just like, just trust our system unless it goes against Trump, well, now the system's corrupt. There's literally no way for you guys to be wrong with that mentality.
Aren't you doing the same thing? I
How? I
mean,
literally said I criticized the Democrats. I'm not even like this major Democrat supporter.
really? So you criticized all of the lawfare against Trump. Oh, wait, you just got through saying that he's a convicted criminal. So you don't criticize all of it. And
No,
you
I don't think
criticize
it's all lawfare.
oh,
I told
do.
you that off. I don't
I
think it's
do.
lawfare.
I do. I mean, look,
Right? It
Biden's
doesn't
whole
blow my mind that a billionaire
Biden's
from
whole
New York
strategy
makes a
Biden's whole
social
strategy for getting reelected was to have these cases decided a year and a half before the election, have the Republicans run from Trump because of exactly what you've said, and then nobody would care about his mental status and he would get reelected. The problem is it didn't work. Suddenly, the voters, the Republicans, saw through what they were doing, and then suddenly it became they had to look at Biden, and Biden's not up for the job.
Okay, so let's go back to some more lawfare from Trump. So
Wait. Give me an example of lawfare from Trump. I mean, we
quid pro
started this
quo
whole
with
discussion.
Mayor Adams.
Okay, that's your opinion. I
Oh,
mean,
okay. And it's your opinion that the Democrats are doing lawfare on Trump.
wait
Now
a minute.
what?
Wait a minute. So what is the evidence of lawfare against the New York mayor? I mean, just the timing. I mean, that's it. Just the timing. I mean, the case against him was filed by Biden, and the allegations of lawfare was because that was filed because he said he agreed with Trump. So if you want to take the lawfare approach, you would say that Trump was correct, that was a political decision to file those charges against him, and he was correcting that when he came into office. I mean, that's really the lawfare argument that's been made on there. But you're
Okay.
coming and saying, well, now after that's all happened, now the Democrats are saying, well, the real lawfare is that Trump made a deal with him to work with the Republicans. He was already Mayor Adams was already saying he agreed with Trump before this suit was filed. So, I mean, I would argue he was already saying he was going to do that before the charges were even filed.
Okay. Sorry, I missed kind of your middle part there because you asked for evidence and I started. So I wasn't trying to like not listen to you. I'm sorry about that. But
No. I apologize.
I wanted to like find some solid evidence if I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still kind of looking at it. Okay, so you don't think the dismissal of the corruption charges? So you're saying those charges were going to be dropped against Mayor Adams, regardless of him sort of making this deal with Trump or whatever?
I don't
Because Mayor
agree.
Adams had corruption charges against him.
Filed by the Biden
Right.
Department of Justice. They weren't filed by Trump to try to get a deal with Mayor Adams.
But
They were
Trump
filed
was
by
dropping.
Biden.
I know Trump was agreeing to drop the charges
In exchange, and the allegation is in
exchange.
exchange for Adams agreeing to work with Trump. He'd already agreed
Right.
that he was going to work with Trump before the charges were filed. So what was new?
Okay.
He was already saying, I'm going to work with Trump because I think Trump is correct. Look at how much money New York City's having to spend on all this. It's not sustainable. And then suddenly he got charges filed against him for saying that.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe we won't be able to pull it up now or anything, so I don't necessarily disbelieve you, but I've never seen evidence for Mayor Adams coming out before these charges and saying this. So I guess we're just at a stalemate there.
So you disagree that there's any evidence that Mayor Adams said he agreed with Trump that something needed to be done with immigrants, and that the amount of money New York was spending on them was unsustainable? You don't think
No,
there's any evidence?
I don't disagree with that necessarily, but that's different. Like just agreeing with some policies or whatever is different than fully committing to Trump's like plan and agenda, right? After Trump like brings up this dismissal of charges.
Look, I mean, let's take a step back. The allegation that you're making has destroyed any chance of Mayor Adams getting reelected. So whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. He's not going to get reelected, and he's going to get replaced.
This is the chief.
Let me finish. He's going to get replaced by somebody who is the same on those issues as he was before he got these criminal charges. So, I mean, if you want to argue about these advocacies attacking people, I would say the evidence is you will stick to the advocacy's policy on illegal immigration, or you're going to get attacked or even have charges filed against you. And that's proven true with Mayor Adams. He probably has no chance of getting reelected, and it's all because he had the audacity to say, I disagree with the Democrats on illegal immigration.
Well, so I do think it matters, even if Adams gets replaced, because we're talking about a deal with the president of the United States, right? That's the part that matters to me. I don't care about some mayor, like what happens to him after.
Okay, but don't you think New York should be working with the federal administration on immigration policy? I mean, we've already have abundant
do you think Texas
cases.
should have been working with the federal government on immigration when Biden was in office?
Oh, good question.
Now it doesn't matter. Now law doesn't matter.
No. What? Okay, so the problem is we've got one administration that wants to enforce our existing laws on immigration, and in Texas you had a federal government that refused to enforce the laws on immigration or illegal immigration. So you had Texas.
Well, that was the dispute. That's not fact. That was the dispute.
You don't think that the federal government in Biden in Texas was refusing to enforce immigration policy?
No, I don't think they were just going against laws. No, I think they were not enforcing what the Republicans wanted, right? You guys wanted more law, and the Biden administration.
But here's the problem. The problem was the Supreme Court of the United States held multiple times that it was the federal government whose job was to enforce immigration policy. And so in disputes with Texas, probably more times out of not, the federal government won. But the problem is they started losing at the end of the administration because of the realization that they weren't doing their job. And so if they're not going to do it, then are we going to say that what Texas is doing is contrary to that policy? Or are we going to let them fill the void? I mean, we had the National Guard, the Texas National Guard at the border for probably several years. And then, the real reason why I say all that is because when it came time to run for re-election, Biden was citing the great success of the border in Texas, and it had nothing to do with him. It was Texas defending their border themselves. And so that's when it's just all baloney.
Okay. I was wondering where this all would go.
Well, I was just using the Biden thing on immigration as an illustration to kind of get us into criminal justice. I wasn't trying to start this whole big thing. I wasn't trying to.
But I knew it would go here. Well, no, I'm not upset. Just please, like I know I get really passionate and stuff, but like, please don't mistake that for being upset.
No, I'm not. I've been called a racist. I've been called, when someone can't respond to my arguments, they just divert to you're a racist, and I'm like, that just means you can't respond to my argument. So we're nowhere near there.
Which, by the way, this is something that I critique about my own side, right? Like, I understand that both sides have problems. I think I'm trying to point out to you with the Trump movement right now that you guys just don't seem to ever be critical of your own side, especially when it comes to breaking the law, and especially coming from someone who seems to be concerned with crime and law.
Okay, so let's talk about the federal government right now. What's the federal government doing to break the law?
So, again, a lot of this is being disputed, so you're going to probably actively dispute it. But in my opinion, warrantless arrests, even on illegal aliens, is breaking the First Amendment.
Okay, all right. So you're okay. So what about, you think that's a violation of the law because they have illegal aliens have a First Amendment right to express their opinion down with Israel, and so we can't remove them for expressing those opinions. That's
actually, sorry, I'm kind of conflating two things on accident here. So one of them is a First Amendment thing targeting green card holders or permanent residents. They're not illegal aliens, right? They are permanent residents going to school. That one, I believe, is breaking the First Amendment. And then the other one, just the deportating of actual illegal immigrants, is sidestepping many judicial orders, right? Many judges, right? They are literally going against the court systems, and the Constitution is founded on the idea of balancing powers. We can't just have an executive power running amok and disobeying our courts.
Okay, let me just say a couple things. So, first of all, there is different levels of due process that applies to people who are in this country who are not citizens. So people who are here, who have already been through the process and have a deportation order, and they have remained in the country, they get the lowest level of due process. And the only due process they're entitled to is a writ of habeas corpus to question whether they are really that person. They don't get to retry their whole removal order. They've already had their due process. So that's the one that I'm really critical of, because the press right now is saying they haven't had due process. No, they've had due process years ago and they decided to stay. The longer you stay, if you're here over 2 years, you get additional due process. But if you have a green card, you probably have even more due process. And so you get more than just a writ of habeas corpus. And so I do believe that the presentation that's being made on all these things, that they're being conflated. And I don't think that we're looking to see whether people are already under a removal order and see if they've already received their due process. And then, we can have a disagreement about whether Trump can invoke this law, but that's already in the courts. We do have a statute on the books that allows the president of the United States to do an executive order. It's been done in the past. We can dispute about whether it applies. We can even say there's courts that have ruled that it should not apply. And there's a case pending at the Supreme Court on either a stay issue or something else about whether he can do that. That will be decided by the courts, but you can't say it's illegal. I don't think,
Okay, do you agree, though, that they have been either ignoring or actively going against court orders?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
You could argue that the planes in the air maybe was a violation of a court order, but let me tell you something. What we don't ever hear, and I'm an old appellate attorney, but what we don't hear is that order was not, that was an oral order by the judge, and it was not reduced to writing. When he reduced his order to writing, he did not include that in it. Now, in my world as an appellate attorney, when you make an oral ruling and then you reduce it to writing, the written order is what's binding. And no one ever talks about that what the judge ultimately ruled was an oral ruling, and then he didn't reduce that to writing. And so that judge is trying to hold the administration in contempt for something that he said orally and did not put into a written order. And you know what? You've got attorneys that said whatever they said, and I think that you can't criticize the President of the United States when he relies upon the advice of his legal counsel in that situation.
So you're saying the order, this is the El Salvador one, right?
Yes,
the
sir.
one,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And you're saying the court order was just a verbal order and it wasn't like written?
The one that said turn the planes around was oral. And then when he reduced it to writing several hours later, it did not include that. And,
Okay.
you know, in my world, you can't appeal an order that's oral. You have to have it in writing. And then the court ultimately ruled that he didn't have jurisdiction over the case. And so now he's trying to hold the Trump administration in contempt, even though he didn't have jurisdiction to enter the order to begin with.
And they also ordered to facilitate them coming back, right?
Well, I think originally he ordered the Trump administration to return them, even though he's now in the hands of a federal government, a foreign government. And so I think the Supreme Court of the United States changed that and said facilitate. Now, what does facilitate mean? I mean,
I understand that.
Do you think a trial court in the United States can tell the President of the United States how to conduct foreign policy? I don't think so. And so I think they changed it to facilitate. Facilitate does not mean bring him back.
Yeah, but it means do something, right?
Every day they're following an order, giving an update to the court. So, I mean, isn't that doing something?
What are they updating the court with?
Whatever they've done.
Which is what, though? Like, what have they actually done?
Well, but the problem is that's what they've been ordered to do, and they're doing it, and you're saying they're in violation of the law.
No, they've been ordered to facilitate.
They've been ordered to give the court an update every day, and they are. The president of that country, of El Salvador, has been asked if he will return the defendant, and he said no. What can we do? You want us to invade El Salvador over a Salvadorian citizen?
So that's their update for the courts, is that they've tried to request the president send them back?
Isn't that facilitate?
No, I'm asking. I just want to clarify because I wasn't sure if that's what you were saying.
I'm saying, well, let's just say if it is, isn't that facilitate? They've asked and he said no.
Yeah, I would say if they are actively like trying to work with the El Salvadorian president to send them back, then I would say that is facilitating.
But isn't this just ridiculous? What would happen if he got brought back? Wouldn't he be just deported again? Because this whole concept about he was ordered to be removed to Salvador, and it was after that a different proceeding that they said, well, he feels threatened by other gangs. Those other gangs no longer exist in El Salvador. So don't you think if he was brought back and we had to litigate it, that limitation on his removal would be removed and he would just be removed again?
Well,
why are we being forced to do that?
This is the whole point, right? If we are a party that cares about law and order, then yes, people should be they should follow the process here in our country where the laws are being broken rather than being deported to another country. Just like sayonara, right? If we care about law and order, we should be following the procedures of law and order.
But here's the problem. This is already someone who's been through the system and had an order of removal.
It doesn't matter. You're excusing lawfare.
So no, I'm not. This is not lawfare because this is the lowest level of due process. He doesn't get due process other than a writ of execution, just a writ of habeas corpus saying, I'm not the guy. I mean, I would argue we've got competing orders. We've got an order of removal from him that's been appealed and affirmed. And then you've got a second later order saying, well, he can't be sent to El Salvador. I mean, I would say those are contradictory orders. But he's already been subject to an order of removal. So why does he get to redo it all?
Look, I may even agree with you on certain little nuances of this about how ridiculous it might sound or whatever else. The whole point I'm trying to make to you is that for a party that continuously talks about law and order, tough on crime, you guys are never, ever willing to take any accountability for Trump. we have provided so many examples today, and not a single one have you been able to slightly concede this way or that way that, this is probably a area which Trump is either breaking the law or just not following correct
I don't
procedures.
believe Trump's violating the law. I mean,
it seems like you have no ability to critique what this administration's doing at all.
Okay, we've already given examples saying that if you have already had an order of removal, you get the lowest level of due process, which is a writ of habeas corpus, and you have to file that wherever you're being held in the district that you're being held. How many examples do we have already where they're judge shopping and they're filing a writ of habeas corpus, or not even filing that, they're filing something else?
Judge shopping?
Wait. In some other jurisdiction that doesn't have jurisdiction, and the appellate courts have now ruled they did not have jurisdiction over those cases, and yet you're saying that the Trump administration is doing something improper? I mean, they're the ones being attacked when the trial courts do not have jurisdiction to do what they're doing.
So when you sneak little things in there like judge shopping, right? This is what causes me to descend into all these little rabbit holes, because you guys load all of this language with judge shopping or activist judges or whatever else, constantly. If it disagrees with you, it's an activist judge, or we're shopping for a judge that agrees with us.
Well, okay, this is one area where I'll agree with you. Both sides commit the same error. I mean, and it has hurt the judicial system immensely. I mean, do you remember a time when, I'm so old, I remember when someone was in trial and Nixon was asked something, and he said, well, I think he's probably guilty. And so they had to interview every juror to ask, I think it was the Sirhan trial or something, and about whether that would influence them. And, and they made a movie about it. And one of them was like, well, I never voted for Nixon anyway. But my point is, we don't even do that anymore. I mean, it's just common that, it's result oriented. If you don't like the result, then you question the legitimacy of the judicial branch. And I think that's bad. I think it's bad for our country, but there's reasons why that's being questioned, honestly.
Okay. Let's move on. Well, not fully, but just to a different case. Because what I'm trying to do is throw out all of these things to you, right? To see if there's any way possible that you could admit that maybe there's some level of shenanigans happening, right? Because it seems like, nobody's perfect, right? The Trump administration can't be perfect. There's no way they're swinging 100 their whole presidency, right? So
who has said they were?
Well, I'm just saying the fact that we can bring all these cases up and it's just always excuse. Like there's no actual accountability for some of these things happening.
Why should there be accountability on the El Salvador case where the Supreme Court ruled the court didn't have jurisdiction? So what accountability is there to apply on a court order or a court that didn't have jurisdiction to hear the case? Why is there a need for an accountability on Trump in that situation?
If the Supreme Court came out and ruled later that they didn't have jurisdiction, then we followed the right process and everything's good. But
we've questioned even in this conversation.
They didn't wait for the Supreme Court to do that. They just superseded it.
I disagree with that.
You disagree that they didn't wait until the Supreme Court ruled on it?
We've already talked about that. We don't have, a written order that he violated. And I disagree with that. And then ultimately the Supreme Court ruled that the court didn't have jurisdiction to enter any of the orders. And when you don't have jurisdiction, the orders are void and didn't have to be followed in the first place. It's not like they were voidable. They were void for a lack of jurisdiction. Remember, I'm an old appellate attorney, so if it's void, it never existed. And yet you're arguing that he's committing lawfare, he's not following orders and all this. I mean, it was void for a lack of jurisdiction.
Okay. So yeah, maybe that one ultimately, once it's ruled by the Supreme Court, then fine. But still, before it was ruled, he was actively going against the court order, right?
I disagree with that.
And
it wasn't in writing. His attorneys told him he could do it, and ultimately there was no jurisdiction. So where's the argument that he violated a court order? He should be held in contempt I mean, for a whole multitude of
So
reasons.
because his attorneys tell him that it's okay. This is reminding me of the whole January 6th thing, right? So his attorneys tell him, hey, it's okay if you get fraudulent electors to come lie with fraudulent documentation and claim that they're the actual electors, right?
The interesting thing there is, do you think Trump's the first one to ever have
I don't care.
alternative executors?
No,
It's been
I just
done
don't
multiple
care.
times in our history, normally by the other party, but suddenly it's only a problem when Trump does it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No,
I mean,
nobody's done it to the extent that he did. So
what are you
can bring
talking
up
about?
the whole
No.
Hawaii thing. You can bring up Al Gore or whatever. Nobody has got these fraudulent slates of electors in the way that he did to show up with fraudulently signed documents from their state to try and overturn an election. Like, come on, dude.
You think Trump didn't base that on what's been done in the past? I mean, come on. I
No,
mean,
give me an example that's the same as what he did.
well, I mean, look, I haven't researched that, but I do know that there have been slates of alternative electors done in the past multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's not like Trump did something
But
brand
give me
new,
an
novel.
example
Oh my
of
God.
anyone doing it to the degree that they did, where they showed up with fake, fraudulently signed documents
Okay.
from
Did they
the
come
state,
up? Did they show up with documents? Yes. I mean,
fraudulently signed documents. How can you say this is good lawfare right now? How can you say that, like, dude is not using the law politically?
so you're just trying to make it sound bad because it's Trump. I mean, that's not anything that's not been done before. Alternative
give me an
electors. So I'm just looking examples. 1876, there was alternative electors. I mean, Vermont,
Yeah.
1876.
Give me a
I mean,
case that was the same as what
1876
Trump
to
did. Right.
2020, multiple
No.
examples of alternate electors.
The problem
But
is
suddenly,
not
when
just
it's
simply
we
alternate
must
electors.
kill him.
No. Hold on. You're putting words in my mouth now. Come on.
And I mean politically.
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
using you to do anything else.
Okay. I am specifically looking for a case that's the same degree as what Trump did, right? I understand you can have alternate slates of electors. I'm not just particularly calling that out as the problem. I'm
Okay.
calling the problem as fraudulent documentations, as pretending to be signed off by your state. And not to mention the going against the people's vote on this is
Okay,
like,
so you
put
used
the law
Hawaii.
aside.
You used Hawaii as an example because
Right.
its first presidential election was a nail biter, and the governor first certified Nixon, and so the both parties certified their own slate of electors to
Right.
Congress.
So this is the whole point, Ken. This is the whole point. Those were certified alternate electors from
No,
the state.
both
They were
parties.
not
They didn't come from the
fraudulent.
state. They came
were
from the
not
parties.
fraudulently elected. They were certified.
Uh-huh. They were both from the parties.
But were they fraudulently certified, or was it actual certification?
Okay, so here's my point. My point was to say that Trump did something new and only he's done it ever before is just crazy.
That is
We've
new.
had whoa. We've
That
had
is new.
alternate electors done in the past. Your
Not
comment,
fraudulent.
you
Not fraudulent.
now admit that there was alternate electors in the past.
I admitted
but there's
that
some
right off the bat.
big difference
Nope.
between
I admitted that
the
right off
past
the bat.
situations and Trump.
Ken, I admitted that right off the bat. You're
Once
not
you
recognizing
admit-
the difference here.
Once
I'm-
you admit that there's been prior alternate sets of electors, you're done on this issue.
No.
You're done.
You're literally just choosing to not hear me, Ken. I
No,
said
no.
those were certified alternate electors. Certified. Do you know what that means versus fraudulent? That's the difference.
I hear what you're saying. You're saying it makes a difference because these were fraudulent. The other one wasn't. I'm just telling
Yes,
you, it's been
fraud
done in the
makes a big
past. It's
difference.
been done in the past.
Does
it
fraud
something-
not make a difference in crime?
Is it something that I would have done? No. Is it something I would have recommended to be done?
cannot
No.
undermine this
But is it
difference.
something that's never been done in the past? No.
As someone who cares about crime, you cannot sit here and tell me that being fraudulent versus following procedures to certify is just no big deal.
And let me think, what happened to the litigation about that? Oh, it was all dismissed.
Was it?
So all the criminal cases on that, and they tried to just dismiss Trump after the election. And so they were going to proceed against everybody else. And that was thrown out too. So it was fraudulent. It was all thrown out after the election.
hold on. I have to check you on that one. So I'm showing
raining really hard here.
Lucky you, we need that. So I don't want to. It's boring for the stream to like get too researchy, but my first search here is showing that there were convictions. Now,
There were
granted,
pleas.
maybe they dropped. I'm not even going to dispute that, but there were convictions.
There were convictions with plea deals where they got no prison time and agreed to cooperate. And then after the election, the case against Trump was dropped, and they were going to proceed against everybody else, and that was dropped as well. So, I mean, fraudulent.
Well,
it was dropped.
Well, I'll definitely have to look that one up because, like I said, I don't want to sit here and dig it on stream. But people were convicted for fraudulent.
No, they weren't.
Fraudulent.
No.
Yes.
No, I'm not going to disagree with that. They pled guilty to either got no prison time and with
but they're still
agreement to cooperate,
guilty, right?
But
like that's
but that is a conviction. They pled. So I'm not going to disagree with that.
So let me know if you need to go. Like, it's fine. We said an hour, so it's up to you at this point. Like, if you let me keep going, I'm gonna keep going. But it's totally up to you. So just try to, if you can, give me like a 5 or 10 minute heads up when you think you do need to take off.
Yes, sir.
So let's go over. By the way, I want you to know, like, this is. The reason I'm going into all of this is because I'm not even here to dispute your FBI findings. Like, in my perspective, I wouldn't put it past the FBI cheating the numbers a little bit, right? Like,
no, it's simpler than that. They weren't cheating the numbers. They were switching over to a new system on how to gather the data. And so the police departments across the country had to get new equipment so that it could interface with their new system. And so, I mean, the political scientists or the social scientists that were aware of it were saying these statistics are not complete. They're not accurate. We should not rely upon them. It was the politicians that were saying these statistics show that crime is going down. And when the two largest police departments in the whole country didn't have the new equipment. And so what happened, I believe, is more police departments got the new equipment. And so it automatically updated. And then somebody looked at the data and said, oh, now it's showing crime is up. It's not down. And it will continue to do that as more and more police departments get this new equipment. So I'm not saying it was nefarious. I think the release or the discovery that crime is now going up was probably, I mean, you could argue it was nefarious because it was a month before the election. And that's when I said, you know what? I think Trump's going to win this, because why would the FBI release this data a month before the election if they thought Biden had a chance of winning? They'd much rather have this come out before the election than after. So, I mean, that's where I come down on that. I'm not saying the FBI did something dastardly. I think that there is a reasonable explanation for this. But all the social scientists were saying this all along, and it was the politicians on one party saying, and their advocacy group saying, oh, look at these statistics. This proves what we've been saying, and it was just all garbage.
So I'm curious why you would give so much grace to the FBI, but not to any like politicians that used the FBI's data, like before realizing that maybe it was wrong or whatever.
Well, it was inaccurate. I mean, I blame the politicians that used that data because the social scientists were saying, I mean, I wrote an article on this saying that this data is incomplete. And so the people that were using this knew that the data was incomplete. So I do attack them, but that's all one party. I mean, the Republicans were saying that crime is going up, and everybody on the other side, and the advocates were saying, don't believe them. They're lying. Look at the FBI statistics.
And they were FBI statistics that they did have, right?
Yeah, but they're
people
contrary,
were telling them that.
But they're
that
contrary to even other statistics that the government collected.
Right.
I mean, the CDC numbers on murder rates were a lot higher than what the FBI showed. So that's one of the things that I relied upon to show that We know these numbers aren't, there are reasons to question the accuracy of this data. And there was another set that I think Trump even mentioned during the campaign, is some survey that's been in use for 20 years by DOJ. And it showed a completely different picture than what the FBI statistics. And so that was another reason. And then, you could go down to something just as simple as look at the statistics on carjacking. They're probably the most accurate data on crime in the United States right now, because to get an insurance company to pay off on a carjacking, they require a police report. So anytime there's a carjacking where they're paying off on a claim, there's a police report, and those police reports, the data on carjacking is really bad. I mean, it's even worse than what some people say crime is.
So what you just said is one of the points I kind of had when I was reading through these different articles and stuff. It seemed like the FBI didn't tally just like 911 calls, whereas the NCVS did tally those, which made a huge difference on the numbers. So, like, I'm not going to deny that there's no nefarious business here with the politicians or anything, but it does just seem like, collecting data is a difficult task, and it often is going to be somewhat inaccurate. Like,
yeah, but we knew the FBI had changed to a new system. We knew that the police departments had to buy new equipment to report to the new system. We knew that the two largest police departments in the country were not on the new system because they didn't have the equipment. So then, you don't have to say nefarious, you just say incomplete. But for a politician to rely upon it in that environment is very disingenuous, and I would say just absolutely a lie.
Yeah, it's one of the things. This is why I've been bringing up other subjects, is because like the more I looked into your stuff, I'm like, I don't necessarily like disagree with some of this, right? Like, so.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but that's what I just really struggle with. Where I start to disagree with someone like you is like, okay, someone who clearly cares about crime, yet, and we've gone through all these cases. We clearly disagree, but from my perspective, it's just we care about crime unless it's being committed by the party that we support. And maybe on some level, there's a sort of the ends justify the means argument. I don't think you're doing that, but I do think some Trump supporters are now doing that. They're going completely mask off and saying that, yeah, this is justified because the Democrats did it before. But like, that's not a justification. I don't think that's
what's going on. But you know what? I'm probably, honestly, I would be okay with some of that. If you're going to say eye for an eye, I would probably be okay with some of it because that's how bad I think it was for Trump. But on the criminal justice front, I think that, the problem I have with that is we're committing the same errors that we've committed in the past. In the 60s, we felt safe. We became more forgiving in our criminal laws. Crime started going up. And then we had a disagreement. One party refused to work with the others when crime started going up because we had made so many changes to the criminal justice system. And so we had a backlash, and the backlash resulted in Reagan being elected and having the war on drugs. I would say we just had the same cycle repeated. We felt more safe. We were more forgiving on our criminal laws. And then we started having more crime. We look at what's happened in our urban areas. We're not going to prosecute theft under $950. Why would you believe that would do anything else but cause more crime? And then when crime started increasing, they refused to do anything about it. And that's, I think, because of the advocates would say you can't, or we'll put somebody up against you to run next time. I would argue Mayor Adams, that's what happened to him. We could disagree. But then you've just had the same backlash. I think that's one of the reasons why Trump was elected, is because the soft on crime policies weren't working, and we've got one side of the one political party that refused to try to make it better, just like they did in the 60s. And I think that's where we are. I think the backlash would have happened 2 years earlier if the Supreme Court had not made its ruling on the abortion case. I think the ruling on the abortion case, or the backlash against it, prevented this backlash on crime from happening 2 years earlier. And now we're 2 years later, and they tried to use the abortion issue to prevent the backlash from happening. It's just this time it didn't work.
okay, you're saying the abortion thing was used as a tool to sorry, I need some clarification on what you're saying there. Are
Oh,
you
no.
saying that that was like essentially a distraction from the
Yeah,
crime
yeah,
policies?
yeah. Because I think for their
Okay.
supporters, it brought them out in larger numbers to
Yeah,
vote
but you,
on
I
the
mean, you
abortion
do
issue,
realize that
and it
was
overcame the
the
crime issue.
conservative judges who did that, right? So it wasn't the Democrats who used Roe v. Wade as a
Oh, wait. I'm
distraction.
not saying that it wasn't a conservative ruling, but the Democrats used it and whipped up their supporters to come out and
No, the
vote because they
supporters
weren't
got whipped up.
happy. They weren't happy with the ruling, and
Right.
the supporters coming out voting solely on the abortion issue overcame there being a backlash
Yeah, but
that year
they
on the
would have
crime issue.
done that. Like, that wasn't the Democrats just saying, like, you need to. I mean, some of them did say things like this, but the people saw the ruling of Roe v. Wade and they said, fuck that. Excuse my language. They said, yeah, we're going to rally ourselves because we're against that, right? And it just so happened that the only party there to catch them were the Democrats, because the whole conservative party decided to just like fully embrace this abortion ban.
Well, wait a minute. So now 2 years later, that ruling, I mean, the anger subsided.
No, it's
And
still there.
Oh,
It's still a battle.
still there for a small group, but I mean, it's not the majority anymore. It didn't decide the last election. I mean, Harris thought that was going to be the issue that would get her elected. It didn't.
Yeah, it's because people are fighting locally for that. That's what's going on.
Well,
right?
but isn't that
a lot
the
of
whole?
people have given up on the federal system?
But
right
isn't
now.
that the ruling from the federal court? These battles should be at the local level, not at the federal level, because the U.S. Constitution doesn't provide a right to abortion.
Well, that was part of their argument, right? But
well, I mean, I mean, as an old appellate attorney, again, forgive me, but I mean, I'm surprised that Roe versus Wade stood up so long. The cases that were cited in support of Roe versus Wade had been overturned years ago. And so all of the other cases that had similar rulings had been reversed. The only reason why Roe versus Wade hadn't been reversed is because it was Roe versus Wade. And so, I mean, I would argue that the Supreme Court didn't really make that big of a new decision. They probably knew the backlash that would happen. But from a legal standpoint, all of the supporting case law that I think that was used to support the Roe versus Wade opinion had already been reversed.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, this is something I'm very critical of the Democrats about. As the party who claimed to have our back when it comes to abortion rights, they failed for decades to actually try and like do some type of legislation, right?
Okay, yes, I agree with that on the legislation. I agree with you. But I mean, it was always a weird opinion to say there was a constitutionally protected right to an abortion in the U.S. Constitution.
I actually don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make it out to be, because again, I read the case the other day, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not always the best in legalese. But from my understanding, the whole case is surrounded by privacy, which I do think people have a right to privacy when it comes to medical decisions.
And where is the right to privacy in the federal Constitution? There's not. I mean, it's not said it somewhere. If you look at the case law that originated the Roe versus Wade opinion, it was penumbras. So they created this penumbra that arose from certain constitutional provisions. That's all. That's just creative whole cloth. There's
Hold
no.
on. I just read this the other day, and there is a privacy element in the Constitution.
Okay, where is that?
Let me see. Again, research streams aren't always the most fun, but
see, the case law would have said it arises from a penumbra from the 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments.
Yeah, 4th. Yes, exactly.
The 4th right against search and seizures is your right.
The right of the people to be secure in their own persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches, seizures should not be violated. So again, it's just saying that, like, if somebody has a medical procedure, their data, like their medical data, their medical records, can't be seized upon by the government.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of plays on this whole, you have I'm looking at the Griswold versus Connecticut. That's one of the cases that came out with the zones of privacy. That's one of the cases that was the basis of the Roe versus Wade opinion. I believe Griswold was reversed years ago. But
well, and all I was trying to say was that I don't think it was as weak a grounds as a lot of people like to make it out to be, but I do agree that like we should have moved much firmer in the direction of legislating some things rather than just assume that an opinion like Roe v. Wade could stand on its own forever.
Okay, just a Google search says Griswold versus Connecticut has not been reversed. So I will point that out. Maybe the cases cited in Griswold have been reversed, but I know that some of the underpinnings of that analysis have been reversed.
Okay. So let's see. There was at least one or two more things
there's a lot of things we agree upon. I mean, we're going to agree that I believe we would agree that repeat offenders don't have a right to be released from jail. I mean, I think we don't want people to feel unsafe. That people have a right to be free of crime. The question is where do we draw the line? I think the activists would say we shouldn't have a line, and that's the problem. I mean, and I would even go further and say when you enact soft on crime policies, the very minorities that you're claiming you're going to help are the ones that are going to get hurt the worst, because when crime increases, it increases in our minority communities much faster than the general society at large.
Yeah. And so I'll just tell you, like, I agree with a lot of criticisms of the far, like, radical left activism in the sense of just being like, defund the entire police or whatever else, like, being like so soft on crime that we're just letting people steal. But I need you to understand that I also view you as a part of a radical right-wing movement that is also too extreme. Because when it comes to things like drugs, let's just look at drugs only, for example.
Yeah, why am I right-wing on drugs?
Well, assuming that you're tough on crime, like you would want the harshest of punishments for drugs.
Do you agree there should be some punishment for drugs?
Not necessarily, but I don't think we can like just blink and tomorrow have no law surrounding drugs, right?
Okay,
like obviously there would have to be a reformation towards that.
I mean, here's the problem with that. We've tried that. We've tried that.
Let me finish my point real quick, okay?
Okay.
Because the problem I see when it comes, not even just drugs, when it comes to criminal offenses in our country, I see this as a class issue, okay? People like Hunter Biden can pay their way out of drug charges, whereas minorities in some city, wherever else, cannot. They cannot pay bail. They cannot afford lawyers. So it becomes an issue where poor minority people are getting full max sentences for drug charges, and Hunter Biden is not.
So we shouldn't have any criminal laws on drugs because of Hunter Biden.
No, that's Hunter Biden's just a good example to give to you because I understand that you think he did illegal things, right?
Well, you think he did too, didn't he?
The point is, rich people seem to be able to get, and guess what? They seem to be able to get away with crimes.
Well, he did.
Whereas poor
I don't know if he got
cannot.
away with it. He got pardoned by his president father. And there's a question about whether his dad signed, but I think he signed his pardon.
Stuff, right? Trump has all these convictions. Now we're going to suspend our judgment because they've been appealed, right?
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is the problem. When you have money like Donald Trump, right, you can just keep appealing your cases and just throwing all this money at it and avoiding your crimes. Poor people cannot do that.
Okay, so we tried decriminalizing all heavy drugs in Portland and Oregon, and it was an absolute disaster. They put all this money into treatment programs. Nobody went. Less than probably 0.001% went to the drug treatment programs. They had record numbers of people overdosing every month. It was a complete failure. And so when it came time to reevaluate those statutes and those laws, they let them lapse because they were so bad. Okay. And you know what? That's what we're not doing in our criminal justice system, where these soft on crime policies have been tried.
Do you agree that there have been countries who have succeeded in decriminalizing
and you know what?
drugs?
they have a strong accountability element that the far left is refusing to put into it. I mean, we have to give people an incentive to go to drug rehab. I mean, I come from a different place than you think I do on this. I have a sister who had a car accident in 1989. She broke every bone in her face, and she had a 30-year drug addiction to prescription drugs. And I tried everything I could to get her straightened out. I tried getting her put in jail because you know what? A young attorney just out of law school doesn't have any money. And so drug rehab for the poor people is the jail. You get them straightened out. They get them off their drugs, and then you try to make sense to them. But you know what? All these soft on crime policies have taken that away. It's made it worse on our poor communities than better. We've made it where they can't be held.
This is something I could maybe like converge with you a little bit on, right? Like if you're going to say, well, instead of charging them with a crime and sending them to prison, let's just like essentially force them into rehab, and that is their jail.
You can't force without the crime. You got to have the crime hammer over their heads.
Okay, then just
go
as long
to
as they
rehab.
complete. No, then just say as long as they complete their rehab, they are dismissed of all charges.
But you're naive. This is where you're naive. Drug rehab has a 75% failure rate. So you've got to keep the hammer to get them to go back because they're not going to change until they change, until they make the decision, I'm not going to be this person anymore. So when you've got a 75% failure rate, just, okay, you complete it, you're done. I mean, you've got to, they're going to go to drug rehab and drop out. What are you going to do then?
Here's the thing about a country who pretends to love freedom, right? Like, yeah, I understand we all have these stories about, look, I have an alcoholic sister. She's actually just like 4 years sober now, right? I understand. Like, we all have these personal stories. However, like, I'm not going to say we need to make alcohol illegal because, look, my sister was an alcoholic. She almost died from it. She almost overdosed from alcohol, right? We're allowing people free choices. We're not talking about
making these drugs illegal. They're already illegal.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. When it comes to a country that purports to love freedom, right? Why are we not allowing these things to be legal and letting people self-determine their own bodies?
So they have a right. They have a right to overdose. That's what you're arguing.
Well, they do currently on alcohol have a right to that, do they not?
So do you think people should have a right to overdose?
They already do with alcohol. It happens all the time.
So you're saying, yes, they should have a right to OD on fentanyl. They should have a right to OD on methadone. I just completely disagree with that.
So why do they get the right to do that with alcohol?
We're giving up on a generation in our country if we do that.
Why do they have the right to do this on alcohol?
I don't think they should, but I don't drink.
So you would take it further and say we should also ban alcohol. Cigarettes?
No, but you know, when you're drunk, you usually commit other crimes, and so I would say that, you know, we have drug courts, and you know these bad bail reform, soft on crime policies are ending these drug courts because there's no incentive to go there. And so I would argue that the system was working well and doing a lot of what you were saying, encouraging people to get rehab, but keeping the hammer over their head if they didn't. But these soft on crime policies have ended any incentive to go to these types of courts in a lot of our urban areas, and they're getting rid of those courts because nobody's getting enrolling in their policies, and I think that's a travesty. So we're making the situation worse, not better.
So why do I have the right to induce heart disease by eating Twinkies every single day?
Okay, it's all a question of where we draw the line, and you know,
that's
when
exactly
it's illegal
my
drugs,
whole point,
I think
right?
that's the line.
The line should be people's free choice to utilize their body how they see fit, right? Or else we're being hypocrites by saying that we're being hypocrites by saying Twinkies and alcohol are allowed, cigarettes are allowed, but weed isn't, or like
You're conflating two different things. I mean, it's like, where do you draw the line when you do that? And that's the whole question. We have no moral compass in this country. But when you start doing what you're doing,
my moral compass
then it becomes,
no, that's not
why
fair.
are we prosecuting
You're projecting a lack of moral compass on me. My moral compass is surrounded on people's right to their body and consenting to their own behavior.
Why are we even prosecuting pedophiles? I mean, it's just their decision. Why are we? Why are we only allowing a person to marry one person? Why can't they marry two?
What are you talking about?
Well, it's the same thing.
You're violating someone else's body when you rape them. Yeah, obviously that's breaking the consent code.
I mean, that's the whole point. Where do you draw the line? And right now in our society, wait. In our society, we have drawn the line at illegal drugs. You just disagree with it. I mean, we've drawn the line by a society, and you disagree with it. And you're saying, and you're criticizing me as being hypocritical
because
when I'm advocating in support of existing law. I'm not advocating to change anything.
You want to be harder on crime.
You are the one that says we should have soft on crime policies and we should allow people to violate the law and not have any consequences. And shock of all shock, we're having crime increase as a result, and you don't understand why.
I'm not going to say that's a lie because I don't think you're intentionally doing it. But I literally told you before this this part of the conversation, I said I disagree with not having laws for stealing. Like, I already agree with you there. So no, I'm not this soft on like
illegal drugs, and you don't want those to be enforced.
Yeah, when it comes to drugs, I am soft on that. That's the only thing, though. You can't just say I'm soft on crime, blanket statement, right?
But okay, so you're soft on crime on drugs, which almost 80% of all crime arises from illegal drug trade. So shock of all shocks.
Yeah, because it's illegal.
If you're soft on crime on drugs, then that's going to cause crime to increase.
Tell me you can put those two things together, please. That if a drug is illegal, it obviously requires illegal activity to produce, like to deal, to do, like that's illegal activity just in gaining access to the drug. You're having to go to a drug dealer who's illegal, right? So
possessing it is illegal.
Obviously, it's associated with more crime when it itself is illegal, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, there was a book that said 80% of all crime in the United States arises directly or indirectly from drug trafficking or drugs. So, I mean, why would you advocate for us to have a soft on crime policy for drugs?
Yeah. The reason that's the case, and I agree with you, right? The reason that it increases drug activity, it doesn't just, crime activity. It increases the worst type of criminal activity. It increases gangs and mafias to traffic the drugs. That's because it's illegal. They require bodies, gang members. They require guns to protect themselves. And now they're forming big gangs to protect their trafficking rings.
Here's the problem with what your argument is. You know, we enact policies that are soft on crime with good intentions. And the good intention is to protect the poor, or protect certain segments of society. And I'm not going to say some people don't have good intentions. The problem is when you do that and the policy that you enact is you tie the hands of judges so that they can't do certain things, then you're also tying the hands of judges so they can't address career criminals, organized crime, or gangs. And so you can say, oh, it just needs to be on the really bad crimes. No, it can be on catalytic converter theft, where gangs and organized crime have stepped in and realized, hey, we can make thousands of dollars off of one catalytic converter. And when we quit prosecuting that crime, it's a misdemeanor. But organized crime steps in and they make millions of dollars out of it. And who gets hurt? Society.
Okay. So if you can give me a policy that recognizes the discrepancy between wealthy and poor people when it comes to criminal justice, then I'll start believing that you do care about the minorities and the poor people.
Okay. In Texas, we have when you get arrested, you have to post bond. In Texas, we recognize 3 types of bonds. A surety bond, which is the private industry, a cash bond where you put up the full amount of the bond in cash. Most people can't do that. Or we have a personal bond. And so the standard is if you, the court will set the bond, you get to decide whether you post a cash bond or a surety bond. But if you are poor, the court can grant you a personal bond. Now, if you have a long criminal history, you're not in jail because you're poor. You're in jail because you have a criminal history. Because if they're going to increase the bond because of your criminal history and you can't afford that bond, it's not because you're poor. It's because of your criminal history. And that's what the case law says. So we have a system in place in Texas where first-time offenders, I don't believe, contrary to what you hear in the news, is first-time offenders are held in jail. We don't have room for them. We don't have the time for them. They're not even prosecuted a lot of the times anymore. And so I disagree completely with the position that first-time offenders are unreasonably being held in jail because they can't afford bail. They're released on a personal bond if they can't afford a bond, and they bring that to the court's attention, which that's what the case law says to do. So we have a system for bail, and if you're poor and you claim you can't you can't afford a bond, then the court will have a hearing to determine whether you get a personal bond. That's the system. How is that not fair?
So is that specific to Texas?
Yes, but the problem is, these soft on crime policies say, well, to protect the poor, we're going to tie the hands of the judges to require everybody to be released on a personal bond for certain offenses. But here's the problem. Personal bonds have a terrible failure to appear rate, which means people don't show up for court. And when you don't show up, the case gets put on hold. And so, if a personal bond has a 50 to 80% failure to appear rate and a surety bond has less than a 10% failure to appear rate, and the case gets put on hold, well, you can see what impact that has on the criminal justice system very quickly. The more personal bonds, the more failures to appear, that means those cases get put on hold, which means there's a pressure on the court to dismiss those cases because they can't let their backlogs get too big. Criminals see that as a de facto decriminalization and a green light to commit more crime. That's the facts. That's what these soft on crimes are pushing towards, and nobody wants to say it. But, there's been some town halls where there was a former judge who said until you have an alternative that has the same level of accountability, the same low failure to appear rate, you don't have an alternative. And I would argue that's the reason why the bail industry, the private industry, has been around for 200 years. Nobody likes the bail industry. They would love to get rid of them. They just don't have an alternative that will do what they do at the level they do it.
Okay, so let's take the example, because so far, right, if people get personal bonds because they're in poverty, then I would say this is a decent approach, right? We're allowing people who haven't made as much money in this country to still participate in the same way in the judicial system. So let's just say it's a second or third time offense now.
Okay.
Or I guess we should just say second, because I'm not sure how your process goes in Texas.
No, look, we've got examples of people being released 13, 14, 15, 16,
no, I'm saying for what you're advocating for. I'm trying to not the soft on crime people, but like what you're gonna say here. So say it's a third offense. Let's just say it's like weed or something. Like, I don't know. Or maybe
not weed. Let's just say burglary.
Say it's cocaine. Okay. Or burglary. Well, I'm sticking to drugs for a reason, right? Like drugs. Here's the thing about drugs. Rich people do them. White people do them. Black people do them. Poor people do them. Everybody does drugs, or they don't. Like, it's not just like a specific demographic. They're all over the place, but they get treated differently depending on your status, is my whole point. I
disagree with that completely.
Okay.
I think that's the fallacy.
There's a cocaine case. Let's just do the case then. It's a third offense, let's say, and it's like a millionaire versus someone who lives paycheck to paycheck. You're telling me those two people, when they go through the court system, are going to have the same exact outcome?
Wait, let me ask this. Do you think both of them should have the same bond?
I think both of them should be, as much as possible, should be dealt with the justice. The law should be dealt the same.
So I disagree with this. So the purpose of the criminal justice system is to apply only that amount of pressure that needs to be applied to get you to change course and be a productive citizen. So even on a first-time offender, a millionaire becomes before
I'm saying
court.
I said
wait.
Let me finish. I said we're on a third time.
I know,
offense.
But I'm saying even on a first offense, a millionaire coming before a court on a first offense needs to have a higher bond than a person who comes in and says, I'm poor. when you get to because they're different situations. That's the reason why courts are required to look at the personal situation of each person. When you get to the second or the third offense, both bonds should be substantially higher. A millionaire's bond should be a lot higher than a person who has low means. But even with low means, your bond may be set at an amount you can't afford, but that's because of your criminal history now. So it's not because you're poor.
It doesn't sound like you're actually disagreeing with me, because you agree that it should be offset, as in
I'm saying that each situation should be individual, and these soft on crime policies tie the hands of judges so they can't have any discretion, and we treat everybody the same, and that does the opposite of what they think they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you disagree with me, agree with me more than I originally thought. So the only case that I am soft on crime is the drugs. So that's probably where we disagree when it comes to criminality.
I completely disagree with that, because that's 80% of all crime arises directly or indirectly from drugs.
You're saying the drug causes the person to do a crime.
Trade and people wanting to steal stuff to get drugs.
Because it's illegal.
No, they need money to go buy drugs. Drug dealers just don't give it away, and they're drug addicts, so they don't have it. So they have to go rob to get stuff to sell to get drugs.
But the other aspect of this is the criminal rings that are required to sell drugs.
Yeah,
and traffic drugs.
And the immigration policy opened the borders so that cartels are bringing in their whole drug industry.
Imagine if we put the cartels out of business because we just let people grow weed here.
Well, wait a minute. No. What if we just said, hey, there's a reason why we have such a large drug population in prison here is because everybody in the world sends their drugs to the United States. Why do you think we wouldn't have such a large population of people using drugs when everybody in the world sends their drugs to us?
Wait, what? Say that.
You don't think all drugs are manufactured to come to the United States predominantly?
Oh, you're just saying we're like the highest users in the world or something?
That's where everybody's sending their drugs. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's also because we're the wealthiest, right? We have a lot of money to spend here.
Okay, for whatever reason, they're sending their drugs to the United States, and so either we have to keep the drugs out of the country, which we've not been doing, and in addition to that, we've outlawed the drugs, and so if we're not going to enforce laws,
if it's illegal for me to just make drugs right here, right now, why do I need the cartel to send them to me?
No,
drugs are not that hard to make. You don't need to buy it from the cartel.
With respect, no. As a policy for our society, we should not be advocating people using drugs. Portland is the perfect example. I can't believe you would even advocate for that policy in light of what happened in Portland.
This is a bad way to approach it, Ken, because I can just go back to alcohol, I can go back to cigarettes, I can go back to Twinkies.
And how do you prevent Portland from happening? Let's just decriminalize all heavy drugs. And how do you prevent Portland number 2 from happening wherever you do that?
So Portland, just reference to me again what exactly you're talking about. Just the increase in overdoses?
Oregon decriminalized all heavy drugs for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And as a result, you can do the drugs. You weren't going to be prosecuted. And they had doubled the number of people that started using those drugs and record numbers every month of drug overdoses.
Yeah. It's probably,
how can you defend that?
I bet there's similar statistics if you look back at when alcohol got re-legalized. Right?
So you're saying that just by decriminalizing them, the number of users would go down because you decriminalize them?
No. I bet it would spike at first.
No.
There would be a spike in users. There would be a spike in overdoses. I'm not.
And you're okay with that? You're okay with that?
It's the same. I'm okay with people having the freedom of choice to make their own decisions in life. Yes, I am.
But isn't that the role of the government or society at large? We decide as a society what we're going to authorize and what we don't.
We decide.
Wait a minute. Let me finish. So when we have a DA in one county say, okay, I'm deciding I'm not going to prosecute that anymore. And then you got a county right next door saying I am. Don't people lose faith in the criminal justice system when we got 3 counties right next door to each other and each one has different policies on what laws they're going to enforce and not enforce? I mean, doesn't the public lose faith in the criminal justice system then?
Yeah, I'm not advocating for like different like I don't understand what you think I'm advocating for now.
Okay, I'm saying why should we have different levels of enforcement? We've got laws in the book saying it's illegal, but you're saying we shouldn't enforce it because it's drugs.
No. I would want the laws to not be on the books. It's not that we're just going to not enforce it.
Okay, but they're on the books. So how?
Well, yeah, but the books can be changed.
Okay, they can be changed, but until they are, why are we advocating that they shouldn't be enforced?
Well, I was never just saying we shouldn't enforce the law that's already there. I'm just trying to say that it shouldn't be law.
Okay, but the problem is it's currently the law.
Yeah.
And so why would we say these soft on crime district attorneys in our urban areas have the ability to decide we're no longer going to prosecute these crimes?
Well, okay. This is actually a good question, right? Because I think I actually agree with you here more than you think. Like, I don't think we should just have laws that we ignore. Like, it's either we have the law or we don't have the law, right? So I think I agree with you there as far as I understand what you're saying. But I just don't think that we should have the laws. But do you also agree that each state has the right to organize their own law and criminal justice systems?
Absolutely. Most crimes in the United States are regulated at the state level. The amount of crime that the federal government prosecutes is a small percentage versus the states.
Right. So in that scenario, you are setting up a system that has discrepancies state by state, right? You are setting up a system where law is different when you cross the border over to the next state.
Okay, but you know that. You know when you go into a new state that you're subject to their laws. If you come into Texas, you should know what the laws are. It's like when you travel.
Right.
You go to Bali, you know what their laws are. You know what you can and you cannot do. But these soft on crime policies by our DAs in our urban areas that have been, they're just by policy saying we're no longer going to prosecute these crimes. Suddenly you can go from one county to the next and you can do something or you can't do something. It's both illegal, but the DAs are deciding whether they're going to prosecute. That's wrong. And that hurts the criminal justice system.
Okay. I think I'm finally understanding more what you're getting at. So it's not just that have different laws in these states or whatever, these urban areas. You're saying specifically the district attorneys are purposefully not prosecuting the law at the same standard as the rest of the state.
Yeah, look at Prop 47. It changed certain felonies to misdemeanors. That's all the law did. That's all the proposition did. The reason why they got in trouble is then the prosecutors in our urban areas decided by policy that even though we changed that felony to a misdemeanor, they were no longer going to prosecute theft under $950. Under the statute, it was still a misdemeanor. They just made a policy decision they weren't going to prosecute anymore. That's wrong.
And this is just different than even what I'm like. This isn't just soft on crime, in my opinion. This is not following the law.
Yeah.
So again, if we're both coming to this table assuming that we want to follow law and order, then I agree with you. Somebody who's like saying, I, as the district attorney, am just not going to follow the law because of my policies or whatever, I agree with you. I don't think that's soft on crime. I think that's illegal.
Well, but we've got these advocacy groups that have been targeting DA races across the country for that very purpose. I mean, you've got DAs across the country that were elected as for being soft on crime, and then they were sent to seminars saying, "Here's the policies that you will follow from now on." And then they have another group that issues reports saying, by enacting these policies, they will not increase crime. And they'll say, you don't have to believe us. You can just look at the FBI statistics. Crime is going down. So, I mean, it's all crazy. It's well funded. It's very organized. And the problem is it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. And the shelf life of those DAs is probably right now 1 to 2 terms, because after that, the public will chase them out of office. Look at the DA in Gascon in LA. he didn't survive 2 terms. At the end of his second term, he got 25% of the vote in the Democratic primary. I mean, he was the poster child for these policies, and it took 2 terms for him to completely destroy any chance he had to run for re-election. And that's what we're seeing across the country. They're either being removed from office, they're being recalled, they're retiring, or they're running for re-election and getting their ass kicked.
Okay. I want to be able to start wrapping up a little bit. If you don't mind, there was a couple more things with Trump specifically that I wanted to get into. It matters, Ken. Like I feel like you have to at least understand from my perspective that all of these MAGA people are pointing fingers at the corrupt Democrats over and over and over. Some of the things they point at, I agree with, especially when it comes to foreign affairs, when it comes to things like Obama and Guantanamo Bay. He promised he would shut it down, right? There's a lot of corruption in our government, and there has been for decades. I agree with this. But it seems that the MAGA movement thinks that Trump is just this hero savior of corruption when he is like full gas engaging in the same behaviors. And it really baffles my mind that you guys, like, can you at least understand that?
What corruption
we've gone
Trump
over
engaged
a lot of it. Let's just bring up some more then. So
I don't know if I agree with it's corruption, but give me an example of corruption that's the same level. I mean, like the Biden family business. What has Trump done that shows that he's doing the equivalent of the Biden family business, selling access?
The Biden family business?
Yeah, their whole business of charging governments to get access to Biden. You know, all the allegations that Burisma was paying Hunter. The China government or the China companies were providing an investment portfolio for for Hunter. And Biden said he didn't have anything to do with it. He never met with them. And then there's pictures after he's left office of him meeting with them. Show me something equivalent of that for Trump.
Okay. Well, there's a lot. So we already covered the January 6th thing, which you ultimately conceded was fraudulent. And
you're talking about the electors, but the January 6th thing, the people going.
Yeah, I'm talking about the electors.
I won't agree with that at all. And I don't think I said I conceded that. I said there's been other examples of electors. You're the one that kept using fraudulent.
You conceded that it was done fraudulently.
No, you kept saying it. I said there's been other examples of
certified
of alternative electors in the past. So I did not agree that Trump did something that's never been done in the past. You made the point about fraudulent, and I said, well, it may have been something I wouldn't have done, but it's not. I'm not going to argue it was improper.
You didn't counter my claim at all because you pointed
I didn't counter. It does not mean I agree with you. I've actually specifically said I don't agree with you that I think it was fraudulent. You kept saying fraudulent.
Okay, so you disagree that it was fraudulent.
Yeah, I've told you that. There's other examples in our country's history of alternate electors.
In order to not be fraudulent, that means the state would have to certify the papers rather than people pretending they got certified and signing it themselves, right?
I'm not going to argue with you. We just have a disagreement on this. I'm asking you to show me an example of the Trump family business doing
this is
the
corrupt.
Allegations
this
about
is super corrupt,
Biden.
Ken. Trying to overturn an election of our country. You just assume for a second that I'm right. Would that be corrupt?
Well, okay. Are you going to agree with me that the election was stolen?
No.
Okay, then we can't agree on the conclusion because I agree that the election was stolen.
Which would be corrupt, right?
If Biden stole the election, yeah,
that would be corrupt.
That would be corrupt.
If I'm correct that those were fraudulent and not certified, I'm saying if, right?
You can say if all you want. I just agree.
No, just go with if that were fraudulent, would that be corrupt? That should not be a hard question to answer. That should not be hard to answer. It's a fucking hypothetical.
Sorry.
That should not be hard to answer. This is showing your colors, dude.
Just a dumbass.
This is exactly what I'm saying. You cannot engage in any good faith criticism about Trump.
Wait a minute.
You can't even engage in a hypothetical about it.
I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, we're dealing in a conversation where everything Trump does is absolutely terrible. And, in the history of our country,
When did I
you know,
say that?
wait a minute,
When did
let
I
me
say that?
finish.
You're
So
putting words in my
I'm
mouth.
using let me finish my statement before you start calling me a liar.
Well, you can't say we're in a conversation where I never said that.
Example after example after example. Trump's bad. Trump's orange. Trump's bad. I mean, the problem is
That
going
doesn't mean I've
forward,
said everything he
every
does.
Republican that runs will face the same criticism. It's just another Trump. He's worse than Trump. I mean, this started every election that I'm aware of. The Republican, and I'm old. Every Republican has been called Hitler. Trump has been called Hitler. And when the FBI statistics suddenly came out showing crime was increased, that's all the plaintiffs did. They started yelling, Trump is Hitler. Trump is a fascist, because they could not argue crime anymore. And so I just think the problem is all those arguments.
That's not what you're talking to me, Ken. You're talking to me. I don't care about all that right now. Okay.
Okay. So do you agree Trump has done some good things?
I agree. I could point out a couple things that I have agreed with Trump with. Yeah.
I mean, yes. Trump's done a bunch of great stuff. And I would say that.
Is that not a good thing that I can actually point out a couple things that I agreed with? Like, do I not get credit for that in this conversation?
I guess you get credit, although I don't remember what it was that I don't think you've said what he did that was great. I mean, I guess he didn't die. That would be a good thing. I mean, I hope we can agree that that's a good thing that he didn't die. But
yeah, but I don't think that's really credit to him on that. But
I give credit to that on God, because I mean, just turning your head. I mean, who else had control of that but God?
Okay, let's not get off into that.
I'm sorry. Let's don't talk about morals and
no. I love philosophy and religion and God. In fact, I'd love to just schedule another interview with you where we talk about that.
This is a good point. This is a good point. The Bible teaches that we're all sinners. We're all sinners until we're saved by grace. And so when we start, I mean, a lot of these policies in our criminal justice reform starts with, we're all good people. People want to go to court. There's very few philosophies that say we're good people. Most of them say we are bad people, and we should start our decisions on criminal justice reform from that standpoint, and not tie the hands of judges so they can't address gangs, career criminals, and organized crime. I mean, that's
okay. Genuinely, I would love to have a moral philosophy discussion with you. I really would. And in fact, if you want to schedule another one, let's do it. But I do want to be able to wrap up here eventually. So,
well, yeah. I do not feel like I'm being held hostage. So let's wrap up.
Okay. So, this is the frustration, man. Like, you can't even engage in a hypothetical to say that, yes, in that situation that you've just made up, Trump would be corrupt. Like, how can that be hard for you to say?
How is that hard for me to say? Okay, I'm gonna shock you, and you're not gonna believe me, but I've voted for Trump 3 times. The first time I really wasn't happy about voting for Trump, but I didn't see an alternative. The second time I voted for Trump, I agreed that the election was stolen from him. You can disagree with me. I don't care. I mean, I still get my opinion. The problem is, I feel like for the next 4 years, you were prosecuted if you dared to state that you thought the election was stolen. This last election, I would have crawled over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump, because I believe that the last election was stolen. I believe that Biden was ignoring immigration laws, and he had run as a moderate, and then he governed as a far left candidate. And if you even said that, you were anti-American. And so
that's not true. Look, first of all, I watch so much right-wing content of people who discredit the election. They're not prosecuted, Ken. Where are all these people in jail for saying that the election was stolen?
What are you talking about? The 2020 or the one we just had? I mean,
You just said
We've
that
got
people
Democrats
have been
saying that the election
prosecuted.
was the most recent
Nope,
election was not valid.
you're going off the
You've got
rails now.
Hillary Clinton saying
You're going
that
off the
when
rails,
she
kid.
lost,
You're
that was
floundering
not
right now.
a
Listen,
valid election. So
you said
I mean,
people were getting prosecuted for claiming that the election was stolen. Where
prosecuted
are all these
can
people?
mean multiple things. Prosecuted in the
Where are
press,
they?
prosecuted in politics. Are you kidding me? You don't think people were
Prosecuted in
attacked?
politics, as in people criticize them? That's
Isn't
not
that
allowed
a
anymore?
synonym for attack?
So that's not we can't just criticize people for being wrong in politics anymore? We're going to call that prosecution. If I'm like, Ken's crazy, he thinks the election's stolen. Oh, now Ken's being prosecuted.
Okay, so we're now at the point where attacking Ken for the terminology that he uses in a
prosecution
conversation.
generally refers to like law,
is a
right?
synonym. It can, but it's also a synonym for a bunch of other things like argued or I mean.
So how did you mean it? Sorry.
I'm prosecuted. Well, I don't remember what I said. I said that
we have
people were being prosecuted for saying, yeah, if you dared to come out in the press and said the election was stolen, you were attacked. You disagree with that?
Attacked as in people wrote a hit piece on you and in their journal?
Are you talking about you were what's the terminology? You were canceled. How can we even listen to anything you say anymore because you maintain that the election was stolen against Trump? So
why are people not allowed to use their voice and say you're crazy for thinking?
Why do I get doxxed? Why do I get people put my address online for just stating my opinion that I agree that the election was stolen?
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. That happens on both sides, right? You don't think
that wasn't happening?
You don't think people are getting doxxed for being anti-Trump?
You don't think the ICE agents are being doxxed because they're following?
This is what I'm saying. This is a matter that's happening across all sides, right? So
I disagree that it's happening on all sides. I disagree with that. I only know of one side doxing people.
No, I've seen examples of it of people that I follow who get their addresses doxed. Who are more left wing, right? Like this is just the rise of our political tension right now.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think the big boy. I mean, you and I will never agree on this. The big boys right now is the right. I mean, we have more on the right that are big boys and adults in the room than we do on the left, in my opinion. But do I think probably I would agree with you? There are children on both sides, but I think there's a lot more.
Wait, are you talking about the big boys that don't know how to use the signal chat properly to talk about war decisions? Are you talking about the big boys that got so angry that they raided the Capitol? Like, what big boys are you talking about?
Okay. We are now in a political climate where every mistake you make is grounds to attack you as a complete idiot and you should never be in office. I think that's wrong. I don't think that we get anywhere as a country when we do that on either side. I think that happens more on the left than the right. It's happened more today, probably during this conversation. Even, I mean, you're not entitled to make a mistake, and it's because we've withdrawn any moral compass. We equivocate everything. Everything gets attacked.
I agree with you a little bit here, Ken. And the problem is, right, the left attacks itself as much or more than it attacks you guys. So like to think that you guys are like the pure victims here, the left is constantly fighting itself. I disagree with that.
I think they are now. They are now, but we're going to repeat the problem that brought us Clinton. Because if you think about it, right before Clinton got the nomination, it was left candidates. It's not as far left as it is now. I would argue that we would have had a much more far left candidate the last 2 or 3 elections if the party apparatus had not stepped in. I don't think Hillary was elected. I think she was selected by the party elites. I think the same thing with Biden. I think the same thing with Harris. And the reason for that is because if the primary voters had selected the candidate, they would have selected somebody further left and they would have lost the election. And so they picked Biden knowing he had all these issues because they wanted somebody that was a moderate to run in the general election, and they
Which
got
he
what they
was,
wanted,
right?
and he won.
This is why.
But he didn't run. He didn't run the
This
country
is
that
why
way.
a lot of the left lost their shit when Bernie Sanders got railroaded, right?
He did get railroaded.
I know. This is the left
But he
agrees
wouldn't have
with you
won.
here, and this is my other point to you was going to be to claim that Biden was not super left. I don't know where you're getting this idea that he was super left. He was very much a moderate and very much
when he
more
got elected.
right. No, what did he do? What left-wing economic policies did he institute?
What about the anti-inflation bill? I mean, you don't think that was far left?
Let me brush up. Or do you want to explain the details on it?
Well, they called it the fighting. I don't remember what it was, but it was going to fight inflation. But it was really just giving a whole shitload of money to left-wing causes. I mean, there's not really been any real. I mean, do you think that during Biden were we using wartime spending when we weren't in a war?
So,
the Inflation Reduction Act. It did anything but. I mean, it's the reason why inflation started rising.
So it looks like it wanted to...
immigration was a far left policy.
Looks like it wanted to regulate drug prices. That's part of it. Allocate funding to energy and climate changes.
Yeah, climate changes.
So I would agree that this is the problem with our politics too. Left and right doesn't actually mean economics anymore. It used to be the case that left means you're like a socialist economically and right meant you're like a capitalist economically. Now it just means you support climate change policies, or you support
but the reason why that is
people getting married, like that's not really what left and right means.
There's a reason why on the left that's all been sold down the river. It's because of the Obama coalition. Obama had a coalition of far left social issues, and Wall Street funded the campaigns. And that's been the coalition that won elections. It stood up for Biden. It's just now that coalition's dead. The next presidential nominee for the Democrats will not be supported by that coalition because it doesn't currently exist. And so I think that since Obama, you've had a coalition of Wall Street's funding the election for the Democrats so that they stay off of them for economics policy, and so they get farther and further left on social policies. And then you've got the Republicans. They don't bother the Wall Street because they're usually supportive of Wall Street, and I would say that's probably less so under Trump. But then calling out the crazy left-wing policies on social issues.
Okay, I'm just realizing the problem here. I was trying to give examples of why Trump is corrupt, and every time I do, it just devolves into, well, the Democrats did this, look at the blah, 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 blah. I'm just specifically trying to show you examples of where Trump has been corrupt, and you can never actually address those. It always has to turn into, look at Obama, look at Biden, look at this. Like, sometimes both things are true. Both Biden can be corrupt and Trump can be corrupt, right?
I'm not going to agree that I think Trump is corrupt. I'm just not going to agree. You're not going to agree with me because I think Trump is at his heart a very, very good man.
Okay, prove to me now how good faith you are, please, Ken.
Good faith requires me to agree that Trump is corrupt.
No. That's not it. I'm better faith than that, right? Can you think of any reason, anything at all to where you would say, okay, Trump is corrupt? Like, what could Trump do right now that would change your mind and say this is a corrupt action that he's engaging in?
I'm not sure because I trust Trump. When all these people were coming out on tariffs, people that, where I live, they were like, you know what? If we have to choose who to trust on this issue, we choose to trust Trump. And I would say that trust has not been misplaced so far. So for me to say, what do I think Trump would have to do to be corrupt? I would say the first thing he'd have to do is show me that I can't trust him anymore. And so far, he has not done that.
So let's.
And I mean, let me finish. I don't think there's been any president we've had in 20 years that works harder than Trump. And I think he's working hard for what he believes is the best interest of this country. Yeah. Now, y'all can attack
overtime at those golf course, right?
You don't attack Trump on golf when you got Biden always at the.
It was just a joke because you said he's working harder. Sorry.
But look, he's done more work on executive orders than any president before him, and I'm critical on executive orders because before Obama, we didn't spend the first year of a new president from the opposite party undoing everything that the last president did. Now, since Obama, that's what we do for the first year, 6 months, whatever, is we concentrate on undoing everything the last president did. And I'm very critical of that. But the problem is, if I have to choose who to trust, I'm choosing Trump. Oh, shoot. I've got a DA's office calling me. Just give me a second. Hello, this is Ken Good.
I'll mute you.
Good.
I muted him because, I don't know if there's any personal information or anything like that. So, okay.
I have a DA calling me. So, unless they were going to say, no.
I just wanted to make sure I respected it, just in case.
No, it's fine. Look at Trump's family. No matter what you say about Trump, look at his family. I would say he's got a really great family. He's a family man. His grandchildren are very important to him. And, you can say everything. We have to, if you want to compare to Biden's family, they've had a lot of tragedy. I agree with that. But look, part of that is I think Trump has a moral compass. A very strong moral compass where he holds everybody accountable.
This is where you're starting to get a little delulu, Ken. And I'm sorry. Like I say that a bit tongue in cheek. I'm not prosecuting you. Like it's okay.
Arguing with me. Wait a minute. How dare you say prosecute? I haven't had any charges filed against me.
This is where you really start to lose me because even a lot of Trump supporters that I know and love can at least recognize that the dude is not that of a great moral character. When you got him locker room talking about grabbing women's pussies, when you got him having his issues with his wife, like the Stormy Daniels shit, you cannot just say this is like a good Christian family man. Like maybe you agree with all his policies and he's great for the country, but this is really where I cannot.
Everything you say, I agree with. I agreed with it on the first election, and I agree with it somewhat on the second election. But the reaction and what it was done to this man, who I hold in high esteem, who I think is probably one of the smartest men to be president, you lost me. You lost me on every bit of that. When I would climb through or crawl through broken glass to vote for him this last election because of what was done to this man. And you can argue he's a convicted whatever, and I think it was all done wrongly, and everybody overplayed their hands, and this is what you get. And so I believe him, and I trust him, and I sure as hell trust him a lot better than I would trust Biden.
Do you hear yourself like?
You're
saying you trust this man so wholeheartedly because the other side attacked him. That's it.
No, and he withstood it. He withstood it and got reelected by a majority of this country. Why can't you say, okay, we may not like it, we may have lost, but he's the president of the United States.
I have. When have I not said that? I'm not denying he's the president. I'm not denying the election. The people voted for him. That's why I'm out here arguing to the people, because I think the people are severely misled, right? I'm not denying
How are they misled?
I'm not denying that.
I would say the big thing about Trump is whatever he says he's going to do is what he does, and that's what pisses people off the most.
Oh,
are you kidding me?
How many things has he gone back and forth on, like the tariffs and everything? But then, as soon as he changes,
great example. No, this is a
as
great
soon as he
example.
changes his mind, then you guys are lockstep defending
the whole
him.
Tariff thing.
Well, he's a good businessman. He's a good negotiator.
Yeah,
so anytime he doesn't follow it through, there's an excuse. Anytime he does follow through, he's the best. He follows through on everything he does. Anytime he does something bad, there's some type of excuse.
I saw a meme after the election. Oh no, recently, and it was, and the comment it made was that in Trump's first presidency, he did something that he was not comfortable with. He tried to be a politician, but in Trump's second presidency, he's doing something he's very comfortable with. He's taken over a bankrupt business. And I think that's probably the best comment about Trump that can be made. All this stuff, you can criticize him all you want. You can say he goes on his word. I mean, you don't know anything about negotiations then. I mean, you can't negotiate. You can't posture and then negotiate. That's ridiculous. And so and it just shows, I mean, see, you should see this as an example of how dumb Trump is. I see it as an example of how intelligent he is. And the problem is we'll never come to a middle ground on that because you can never agree that Trump knows what he's doing.
And you can never agree that he is wrong. You literally just said there's nothing I could. No, I trust him full-heartedly.
I do trust him until he violates my trust. I will trust him.
Yeah. So here's an example. Then we can wrap it up. Okay.
Good. Thanks.
It's a hypothetical, Ken. I hope you can engage with it.
Oh, I may be prosecuted. I may be prosecuted.
I appreciate you dealing with my remarks because that's how these things get sometimes. But if hypothetically, okay, Trump started deporting citizens who
he can't do
right, but he can do executive orders and he controls ICE.
He cannot deport citizens. Period. I mean, period.
Okay, so this is good. That's good. So you agree with me? If that started happening, you would be like, okay, these crazy lefties were onto something.
I would say it cannot happen. Trump has said it cannot happen. He says he can't deport citizens. That's the whole. I mean, you're just falling into a trap of the far left saying, "No, be careful. He's going to start deporting citizens. He can't." He
said it himself, Ken. Now, granted, I know you can say he was joking. That's fine. He's always joking when he says unhinged shit.
Yeah, he's going to run for a third term too. Are you worried about that? Oh wait, he's running for a third term.
No, because he's too old. If he was younger, I bet he would.
That just goes to the
point. I think that he would. I think he would justify it by saying the other one was stolen, right? And so he deserves to have that election back.
They would have to pass the constitutional amendment for that.
Well, and they are capable of passing new legislation and amendments, right?
If they pass a statute that authorizes Trump to run for a third term, and it gets adopted by the states by the requisite amount of, I think, 2/3, then he can run for a third term, and it's absolutely constitutional.
And that wouldn't worry you.
No, but I don't. Yeah. I mean, but first of all, it doesn't worry me because that's not going to happen. What are the chances? I mean, how many constitutional amendments have passed in your lifetime? Don't talk about mine because I'm old.
No, I get it. I'm with you. Like, this is why I am hopeful and optimistic about the system that I exist in, because I do think it is a challenge to actually be a dictator in a system, right? So I'm just trying to get, again, it's a hypothetical. Trump has literally said these words out of his own mouth to the El Salvadorian president that the homegrowns are next. Now, fine, if it's a joke, we get to excuse all of his unhinged things as a joke, but let's just say hypothetically, if the Supreme Court or the Congress or whatever else, they make an amendment so that citizens don't get the habeas corpus if they're a terrorist because they're like pro-Palestine or something, and he starts deporting citizens based on a terrorism rule, then would you still support him?
Okay, so you're raising multiple things there. So can Trump prosecute people for crimes that are citizens and then house them in other countries, like outsourcing our prison? That's one thing. I don't think that's what you meant. Do I think that he can deport citizens? No, I don't think he does.
Well, is that a loophole? Wait, hold on. Is that a loophole to deportation though? If we're going to say, well, we're not deporting them, we're just housing them in foreign prisons.
Okay, if Harris County can send some of their prisoners to Louisiana because they have jail overcrowding, what's the difference?
Yeah, because El Salvadorian prisons are like very, very violent, and like,
okay, so Louisiana prisons don't have to comply with Texas rules on housing prisoners. when we send them from Harris
No,
County to
I
Louisiana.
just think when you're a U.S. citizen, you have the right to be prosecuted and held in the U.S., not sent to a foreign country.
Well, you know what? I think the courts might rule that, but I don't. I mean, there hasn't been any litigation on that. But that's not even what you're talking about. You're talking about whether Trump can deport citizens. The answer is no, he cannot.
No, that's
There's
what I am
no
talking
basis.
about.
There's
Look,
no basis.
no. Hold on.
There's no
That is what
legal
I am
basis.
talking about, Ken. I'm if I need to remove the word deport, then fine. Let's say they're not deporting citizens. They're just deeming citizens as terrorists because of their pro-Palestine activism. They're like chanting that Hamas is the best or whatever. So now we're going to send them to foreign prisons. You would be okay with that?
Are you talking about his argument to end birthright citizenship? And then
no, that's a whole nother thing. That's also bad in my opinion, but that's not what I'm talking about. Specifically U.S. citizens such as myself. Let's just say it's me, Ken. Let's just say it's me and I'm at a pro-Palestine rally and I'm saying Hamas is the best, they should defeat Israel. Would you be okay with the Trump admin sending me to a foreign prison as a domestic terrorist?
First of all, I don't think that happens. So I'm not going to agree
hypothetical.
with it because it can't happen.
So
Cannot
you would be
happen.
against that. Good.
I don't say I'm
That's
against
all
it.
I
It
want.
cannot happen. And,
Well,
and only the far left is arguing it's going to happen.
No, there are different rules for people deemed as domestic terrorists.
Right now, we're only arguing about domestic terrorists who are not here legally. And
This is
so
why I
it's the
said
far left that's
hypothetically.
saying, oh, it's going to be the citizens
Well,
next.
look, maybe the far left's crazy. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
But just engage with the hypothetical. Would you be against that if it came to fruition?
I'm not telling you I'm against it. I'm telling you it can't happen. I mean, it can't happen.
Okay. That tells me that I hope you would be against it if it did. So,
well, I mean,
maybe we
I'm
can
saying it
shake
can't
hands
happen. It
there.
can't happen under the Constitution. It can't happen under current law. But let's just say, okay, so let's just say that a Democrat Congress passed a law that we're going to send all the crazy Trump people to El Salvador prison. There would be a large percentage of the Democrat Party that would support that.
And I would be against them. And that's easy for me to say. That's easy for me to engage in the hypothetical because I'm not just some partisan shill that will bow to everything the Democrats do. That's my whole point, Ken.
I am not a shill. I'm telling you it can happen. I'm telling you that the whole point that's being made by the Democrat Party on this issue is ludicrous, and they're just trying to gin up and make people angry on a situation that cannot happen.
Well, I think that tells me enough, like it makes me feel good that you at least think that cannot happen because, in my opinion, that means you would not like it if it did happen. So I guess that's a good place for us to shake hands about it.
I'm still looking for anything about Trump's going to deport U.S. citizens. I don't see anything.
Oh, when he said the homegrowns won't, the homegrowns are next.
Well, okay, so homegrowns. I mean, he didn't say citizens. He said homegrowns. I don't know. I mean, you could. So the left's going to argue, oh, he meant citizens. Freak out, burn your bra, run to D.C.
Well, what do you think that means?
I don't know. I mean, I would say homegrowns, people that were created or made angry in the United States. But we can't deport angry U.S. citizens. I mean, we can prosecute them. We can put them in jail. We can incarcerate them. But, with these soft on crime policies, that becomes difficult. But let me just say this. I know we're closing, but I would say there's so many analogies between the Biden immigration policy and the soft on crime policies that we've seen that have done such damage to our country across our urban areas. And I think the lesson from the Biden immigration policy is he says we can't enforce secure our border without a new statute, without a new law. And we've shown that we know how to secure our border with existing laws. I think the same thing's true with our criminal justice system. We know how to fight crime. It's just that we've been enacting policies and laws that prohibit us from fighting crime. And if we want to have a safe community, we need to take down those guardrails and allow our law enforcement to do what they know to do. We know what works, and give the judges the discretion to do what they need to do. We're now in a period of time where we're arresting people for illegal demonstrations on college campuses, but when they get to the criminal justice system, the cases are just being dismissed because they're taking place in our urban areas where the prosecutors have decided we're not going to prosecute these crimes anymore. What kind of message does that send to the students that are working there, that are going to school there? They can protest and do damage, or they can't, and that sends mixed messages. And that's the whole problem with our criminal justice system. When we don't prosecute crime, for whatever reason, it's a green light for people to commit more crime. Right. Just like it's a green light for more people to come in our country.
You're gonna hate this, Ken, but it's a good tie up to what you just said, right? When the most important, most powerful person in our country has sexually abused someone and has been found liable for it, what do you think that tells young men?
In our history of our country, just the allegation would prevent somebody from winning their next election. They'd be done. We had a candidate for president that had a picture of a girl who was not his wife sitting in his lap, and he had to withdraw from the election. So what does it tell you that the majority of the country elected this man president of the United States, even in light of all that? They rejected it, and they saw it as lawfare by the opposing party. And that's what you
just disagree with the civil courts that Trump's liable for sexual abuse.
No, I think a majority of the country disagrees with it and says that.
So you don't okay. So you're very pro criminal justice, but you just don't trust the criminal justice when it happens.
No,
interesting.
I don't think that's a summary of my argument, but I appreciate you turning my argument on a head. So
well, how can you say we need more criminal, like harder on crime, yet when a civil court comes out showing him liable, you're just like, well, this is just lawfare.
We need to take politics as much as we can out of the criminal justice system. And when we weaponize the criminal justice system, it takes away the credibility of the entire criminal justice system. But we had already been doing that for years before Trump. I mean, you can't say Trump, oh, this all happened with Trump. When you politicize criminal justice the way it had been criminalized by California, by New York, you're only prosecuting your political opponents. So this is exactly what happens.
And you think it's so crazy that a man who is on the record saying, yeah, I grabbed her by the pussy, would never, ever just sexually assault someone and insert his fingers into her without her consent. You don't believe that could happen?
After saying that, I mean, he got elected the first time after that, and he's been reelected.
What do you think that tells young men? Someone who's like bragging, I grabbed her by the pussy, and now being held civilly liable for literally doing that, what he said on the record.
You know what I think that tells you? It tells you that if the Democrats refuse to police their own party and put up good candidates, if you take what your argument is true, this is what you freaking get. And if you would have policed your own candidates and put up a good candidate who had a good moral compass, then that wouldn't have been an option. But y'all chose that you were going to put up the candidates you put up who had all these errors that and social problems or
that's
moral
just distracting from it again, Ken.
And so now
you're pointing to the Democrats again, rather than telling me, what do you think this tells young men and young women when you guys vote for a man like this?
It tells you to police your own freaking party.
It tells you we don't really care that much if Trump wants to grab people by the pussies.
Just police your own party and you won't have this problem. Because if you police your own party, then you wouldn't have had the lawfare against Trump that you had. And you know what? If you're not careful, this is what's going to get him a 60% favorability rate before his term ends. Just go ahead, keep down this road, see what happens.
Well, do you know what I think it tells young men? It tells young men such as Nick Fuentes that he should feel emboldened now to go on the internet and say, "Your body, my choice, bitch." He's literally right after
Yeah,
Trump
and
got
this
elected.
is the reason why recruitment for our into our military is at the highest level, and because Biden had destroyed recruitment. Yeah, he's doing a terrible job. Yeah, I think he's sending all the right messages.
No, I'm saying electing a guy like Trump, who is held civilly liable for sexual abuse, tells young men such as Nick Fuentes, I should feel comfortable now going on the internet and telling women, your body, my choice, bitch.
All right, so let's be real clear.
As someone with daughters,
Trump,
the fact that you can't engage with this,
his appeal, you're going to come out on the next episode of your podcast and formally apologize to Trump because the case was overturned and you've done all this.
Am I lying right now?
And so, are you going to apologize to him? Well, you're saying he's been found convicted by jurors, civilly liable. But if it's reversed on appeal, then he's not civilly liable, and you're wrong.
Am I lying right now?
Yes
or no?
Well, we don't know because we're waiting for a court of appeals opinion.
As it stands, he has been held civilly liable. He's appealing it,
and it's not final.
So I'm not lying. I'm just going based upon the information we currently have.
So in other words, you don't intend to apologize if the Court of Appeals reverses. You're not going to say, "Oh, I'm wrong."
Why would I apologize? I might say, "Hey, looks like we were wrong," but I'm not going to say, "Sorry, Trump, that I used the information that was provided."
That was wrong. Maybe. We don't know. We'll find out.
As it stands,
you know
it's not
what?
wrong.
In the future, when the Court of Appeals
is.
issues its opinion, we should come back and continue this conversation.
Am I wrong that he said that in the locker room about grabbing someone by the pussy? Is that wrong?
You mean before he was elected president the first time?
Is that wrong, Ken?
Before he was elected president the first time?
I don't care. Is
it
wrong or no?
So the public saw it, evaluated it, and made a decision about whether he should be president, and they said he should be. And so
what do you think that tells young women and young men that the guy with the highest authority in our country can just go brag about grabbing people non-consensually?
So you think that women didn't run to him? I mean, they ran to him in higher numbers than they have. Do you think it's because of that? No, it's because of your party or the Democrats trying to raise this whole transgender thing so that even in light of everything you're saying, women chose him over the Democratic candidate.
Well,
great job.
Great job. Great job. They chose him more than they normally would. But it's still it's just constant deflecting into the Democrats. And it's just like you can just never actually focus on Trump. It's always the reason that we voted for someone who's sexually perverted is because the Democrats are
the whole country. Do you think? I mean,
not
Trump
the whole country. Half of the country is not the whole country.
He was elected by Republicans and independents, and you know what? Democrats voted for Trump. Black men voted for Trump in the larger numbers than any other time in this country. So what does that tell you?
It tells me that people don't really care about women getting assaulted.
I don't think so. I don't think that's the message.
Unfortunately, my moral compass is just different than your guys's because I think that's fucking disgusting.
Well, I think you're absolutely wrong, but I'm going to say with respect, I think you're absolutely wrong. And I think that this was all lawfare, which will be reversed. And that was but that doesn't even matter. They don't even care at this point. The whole purpose of that litigation was to prevent him from being president. And then once they had those jury verdicts, they were pushing Trump to be the Republican candidate because they thought there's no way this man can get elected. And guess what? He got elected. So if these cases get reversed, Katie bar the door. Katie,
I'm right.
I
think you're right about one thing. I think that your guys' movement very successfully utilized the transgender issue to do the biggest smear campaign on the Democrats and be like, look at how crazy these guys, these transgender advocates, that was literally the entirety of the last few years. That's all the right-wing media pundits are talking about is transgender. It's this is the smallest proportion of people in our society.
Let me ask you, why do you think the Democrats created this hill to die
on? For me, I didn't create this hill to die on. I have loved ones who are transgender, and I will die protecting them. So that's why I die on this hill.
Is completely different. Do you think that
protecting their right to go to the bathroom so that they don't get jumped in the wrong bathroom?
Do you
Okay.
think parents should not be told that their daughter or their son wants to become transgender and take the drugs that will irrevocably prevent them from doing things, and it's irrevocable, and they shouldn't be notified? You think that?
We're not gonna get we
Think
got
that?
it. Ken, we could go all day. I think
But I'm
both
just
of
trying
us
to figure out why
look,
that became an
we're
issue.
not we're not
I
we're
mean, I
just
just don't understand. I don't understand
I would
why
love to
that
do a
became an
round two with you if you're willing. Like, I don't know if you're willing after the hostility I've shown you, but
issue.
I would love if you'd be willing to come back. We have to end this somewhere. We're gonna just keep talking about every single issue if we don't end it.
Well, let
So,
me just close by
yeah,
saying,
go
if
for it.
people would like to have more information about my organization or the organization I'm on the board of, our website is pbtx.com, the Professional Bondsmen of Texas.com, pbtx.com. We have a blog where we highlight important criminal justice stories, obviously from the side of being strong on crime, and highlighting what bail reform policies that we think are bad and what works. We also have our own podcast. There's a link on our menu, but you can also go to just thebailpost.com, thebailpost.com. All we do is episodes about criminal justice reform, what works, what doesn't work. Our goal is to educate legislators and the public. And if you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, we have an episode on that. If you know what the New Jersey plan is, so it's a small audience, but it's geared towards educating people on these issues. I will thank you for allowing me to come. I mean, I don't mind having an argument. I don't mind having a strident argument. I think I've shown I don't have any problem defending my positions. You may not like them, you may not agree with them, but I'll defend my positions. And I appreciate that. I like those kind of arguments. That's my favorite kind of argument or podcast to have is, you want to push me, you want to make me think. I'm more than happy to do that. What I don't like is to be called a racist because you can't respond to my arguments, or, you use, or when somebody uses strident language to describe the criminal justice system. Jails are not jails, they're cages. So we should get rid of all cages. And I'm like, we can't have an intelligent conversation when you're using language that is intended to cut off debate. So I appreciate this. I mean, we disagreed on a lot, but I still appreciated the conversation. There were some things we agreed about, probably a lot on the issue I came to talk about, criminal justice reform. And I completely regret trying to use an opening analogy about Trump and immigration issues and make an analogy on criminal justice reform. But again, I don't have any problem defending my positions. I like it. I like to argue. Don't tell my wife.
Yeah. Well, and I hope that you feel as if I've at least tried to engage in your arguments and not simply just say you're a fascist or a racist or whatever else, because I agree with you. This is something I'm very critical of my own side. Like, it just seems like none of them can actually engage in the argument. And this is the number one reason I think we actually lost the plot with the people and the voters. Because
imagine what the Democrat Party would be like today if they had enacted the same policies they enacted on soft on crime, but then overlaid on it a strong accountability segment. They'd still be in power.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate you coming, and like, to me, sometimes my language gets colorful and I do get passionate, but like, I hope that you don't see that as me trying to avoid the argument. It's just sort of my passionate way to put a cherry on top of things, I guess. And
hey, I came to have a conversation. We had a very spirited conversation, and we both got colorful, but that's what conversations do. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And have your guy, if you do want to do another one, we could talk about moral compass, maybe Christianity, moral philosophy, and Christian nationalism. So
we have to still talk about criminal justice.
Well, just if you're down, have your guy email me again. So
all right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care, Ken.